Raymond Whitmore looked at the black woman's extended hand like she had offered him garbage. He pulled both hands behind his back, his lip curling with undisguised contempt. "I don't shake hands with janitors," he said loud enough for every executive in that boardroom to hear. "Building maintenance is on the second floor." The woman didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply withdrew her hand with the patience of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "I'm not the janitor," she said quietly. Raymond laughed. "Then what are you doing in my boardroom?" She opened her leather briefcase with movements so deliberate the room fell silent. "Deciding whether to withdraw my $2 billion investment from your company." Raymond's smile died on his face. Before we continue this incredible story, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. And please drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories travel across the world. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 6 hours earlier, Victoria Chen Williams sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. Her phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and smiled. "Hi, Mama. Baby girl, you nervous about today?" Her mother's voice carried 40 years of wisdom and twice as many years of struggle. "No, Mama, I'm ready." "You remember what your grandmother used to say?" Victoria touched the worn leather briefcase sitting on the table beside her. "Let them underestimate you. It's the greatest gift they can give." "That's my girl. Go show them who you are." "I love you, Mama." "I love you too. Now go make some noise." Victoria ended the call and picked up her grandmother's briefcase. She ran her fingers along the cracked leather, feeling the history embedded in every scratch and scuff. Her grandmother had carried this briefcase to clean houses for white families for 40 years. She had scrubbed their floors, washed their dishes, and raised their children while her own daughter sat alone waiting for her to come home. And she had saved every single penny, so that one day her granddaughter could sit at tables her grandmother was never allowed to approach. Victoria pressed the briefcase to her chest for a moment. Then she stood, grabbed her car keys, and walked out the door. Her driver was waiting with the Bentley. Victoria walked past it. "Ma'am, the car is ready." "I'm taking the Honda today, Marcus." Her driver looked confused. "The Honda, ma'am, that car is 10 years old. Are you sure?" Victoria opened the door of the modest sedan and placed her grandmother's briefcase on the passenger seat. "I'm sure. Today I need to see something, and they need to show me who they really are." She drove herself to Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, watching the city change around her. From the gleaming towers of downtown to the historic brownstones of Back Bay to the sprawling corporate campus on the outskirts. She had made this drive a dozen times in her mind, preparing for this moment. 6 months of research. 6 months of financial analysis. 6 months of digging into every corner of Raymond Whitmore's empire. The numbers were impressive. The drug pipeline was promising. The potential return on a $2 billion investment could be extraordinary. But 3 black executives had resigned in the past 2 years. All cited personal reasons. All signed non-disclosure agreements. All refused to speak publicly. Victoria had found them anyway. She always did. What they told her made her blood run cold. Now she needed to see for herself. She pulled into the Whitmore Pharmaceuticals parking lot and found a spot far from the entrance. A security guard in the booth glanced at her Honda, then looked away dismissively. He didn't even bother to wave. Victoria checked her phone. A text from David Park, her CFO. "Team ready. Investment package or withdrawal strategy. Your call after assessment. We're all behind you." She typed back, "Understood. Going dark. Will signal when ready." Another text came in, this one from her assistant. "Board wants update by 3 p.m. Should I push out?" Victoria replied, "Tell them I'll have an answer by noon, one way or another." She looked at herself in the rearview mirror. No designer labels, no expensive jewelry, just a simple navy blazer, her mother's pearl earrings, and her grandmother's briefcase. She looked like nobody. That was exactly the point. Victoria stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance. 2 white men in expensive suits brushed past her without acknowledgement, deep in conversation about quarterly projections. One of them nearly knocked her shoulder. He didn't apologize. He didn't even notice. She pushed through the revolving door and entered the lobby of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. The receptionist, a young blonde woman with a practiced smile, was laughing at something on her phone. She didn't look up immediately. When she finally did, her smile flickered and faded. "Can I help you?" "Good morning. I have a 10 o'clock appointment with Raymond Whitmore." The receptionist's eyes traveled down Victoria's body, the modest blazer, the sensible shoes, the old briefcase. The judgment was instant and unmistakable. "Are you here for the custodial interview?" she asked. "Human Resources is on the 3rd floor. Take the elevator on your left." Victoria felt the familiar sting. 20 years in finance, and it never got easier. The assumptions, the dismissals, the instant categorization based on the color of her skin. "I have an appointment with Mr. Whitmore directly," Victoria said, keeping her voice pleasant. Victoria Williams. The receptionist, whose nameplate read Brittany, typed something into her computer with obvious skepticism. Her eyebrows rose. "Oh." The single syllable carried a world of surprise. "Yes, I see it here. Please wait over there." She gestured vaguely toward a section of hard plastic chairs near the wall. "Someone will come get you, eventually." Victoria glanced to her left. Two white men in suits were being served coffee in a plush VIP lounge with leather couches. A young woman in a Whitmore uniform was asking them about cream and sugar, her manner deferential and attentive. Victoria looked back at the plastic chairs. "Of course," she said. "Thank you for your hospitality." The sarcasm was subtle enough to miss. Brittany had already returned to her phone. Victoria walked to the waiting area and sat down. The chair was uncomfortable, designed to discourage long visits. She placed her grandmother's briefcase on her lap and began to observe. 10 minutes passed. A white man in his 30s arrived at the reception desk. "I'm here to see Raymond Whitmore, Thomas Mitchell." Brittany's entire demeanor changed. She stood up beaming. "Mr. Mitchell, of course, let me take you to the VIP lounge. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water?" "We have a lovely selection of pastries this morning." She personally escorted him to the leather couches, fussing over him like visiting royalty. Victoria watched and noted. 20 minutes passed. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. "Market analyst asking questions about our Whitmore position. Should I confirm or deny interest?" Victoria replied, "Deny nothing, confirm nothing, maintain silence." 30 minutes passed. A young black woman in a Whitmore uniform approached Victoria hesitantly. She was carrying a clipboard and wearing an ID badge that read intern. "Excuse me," the young woman said quietly. "Are you waiting for someone?" "I have an appointment with Mr. Whitmore." The intern's eyes widened slightly. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "I'm sorry for what Brittany said to you," she whispered. "About the custodial interview. That was wrong?" Victoria studied the young woman's face. She saw intelligence there, ambition, and something else. Fear. "What's your name?" "Destiny. Destiny Robinson. I'm an intern in the research department." "How long have you been here, Destiny?" 3 months. I graduate from MIT next spring. Biochemistry." She hesitated. "I was hoping to get a full-time offer, but..." "But what?" Destiny looked around nervously. "Nothing. I shouldn't say anything. I need this internship for my resume." Victoria reached into her briefcase and pulled out a business card. She pressed it into Destiny's hand. "If you ever want to talk, call this number. Ask for David Park. Tell him Victoria sent you." Destiny looked at the card. Her eyes went wide. "Williams Capital Partners, the Williams Capital Partners." "Shh." Victoria put a finger to her lips. "Our secret, for now." Destiny slipped the card into her pocket, hands trembling. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just remember this moment. Remember how they made you feel when you walked in these doors. And remember that you deserve better." Destiny nodded and hurried away, wiping her eyes. 40 minutes passed. Victoria's phone buzzed again. "David, Victoria, you okay? It's been almost an hour." She replied, "Collecting data. Stand by." 45 minutes. An elderly black man in a janitor's uniform pushed a cart past her. His movements were slow, his joints clearly aching from decades of physical labor. He glanced at Victoria, saw her sitting in the waiting area, and something flickered across his face. Recognition. Not of her specifically, but of the situation. He had seen this before. Many times. He gave her a small nod. A gesture of solidarity so subtle that anyone else would have missed it. Victoria nodded back. The janitor paused his cart. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "They'll keep you waiting as long as they can, sister. It's a test. They want to see if you'll leave." "I won't leave," Victoria said. "I know." He smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "I can tell. You got that look. My grandmother had that same look. She cleaned houses for 40 years and never once bowed her head. So did mine." Something passed between them, an understanding that transcended words. "Good luck in there," the janitor said. "Whatever you're here for, I hope you get it." "Thank you. What's your name?" George Washington. Been cleaning these floors for 40 years. 40 years is a long time, George." "Yes, ma'am, it is." He pushed his cart away, disappearing around a corner. Victoria watched him go, feeling something heavy settle in her chest. Finally, a young woman in a business suit approached her. "Ms. Williams, Mr. Whitmore is ready for you now. I apologize for the wait. There were some scheduling conflicts." "Of course there were," Victoria said, standing. She picked up her grandmother's briefcase. The assistant led her through corridors lined with photographs. Decades of company history, executives shaking hands with politicians, award ceremonies, product launches, not a single face of color in any leadership position. Victoria counted. 47 photographs. 47 white faces. The assistant stopped at a door and opened it. Victoria's heart sank. This was not the executive boardroom she had seen in the company's promotional materials. This was a small, windowless room with fluorescent lighting and a table that had seen better days. The walls were bare. The chairs were cheap. The message was clear. "You are not important enough for the nice room." Raymond Whitmore III sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone. He was exactly what his photographs suggested. Mid-60s, silver hair, the kind of tan that came from golf courses and yacht clubs. His suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He did not look up when Victoria entered. 3 other men sat around the table, all white, all in their 50s or 60s, all wearing variations of the same expensive gray suit. They glanced at Victoria with barely concealed disinterest. Raymond gestured vaguely at a chair across from him, still not looking up. "Sit." Not please, not welcome. Just sit. Like a command to a dog. Victoria sat. She placed her grandmother's briefcase on the table and folded her hands, and waited. Raymond continued scrolling through his phone. 30 seconds. 45 seconds. A full minute. One of the executives, a heavy man with a red face, checked his watch conspicuously. Another yawned without covering his mouth. Finally, Raymond set down his phone and looked at Victoria for the first time. His gaze was brief, dismissive, the kind of look you give something you've already decided has no value. "So," he said, "you're here about some diversity initiative. I'm here to discuss a potential $2 billion investment in your Phase 3 clinical trials," Victoria replied evenly. Raymond's eyebrows rose. He exchanged a glance with his CFO, a thin man with a permanently pinched expression. The CFO smirked openly. $2 billion, Raymond repeated. The word dripped with condescension. "That's a big number. Do you understand how many zeros that is?" The executives chuckled. Victoria didn't blink. 9 zeros. Would you like me to write it out for you?" The chuckling stopped. Raymond's expression hardened for just a moment. Then he forced a smile and picked up a remote control. "Well, let me walk you through what we do here at Whitmore. I'll try to keep it simple." He clicked the remote and a screen flickered to life. The presentation that appeared made Victoria's stomach turn. Cartoon graphics, oversimplified diagrams, words in large, colorful fonts. It was the kind of presentation you might show to elementary school children. "We develop medicines, Benini," Raymond said, speaking with exaggerated slowness. "That means drugs. Drugs help sick people get better." He paused dramatically. "Are you following so far?" The heavy man with the red face snorted. Victoria's expression remained neutral. "Yes, I have a general familiarity with the pharmaceutical industry." "Good, good." Raymond clicked to the next slide. More cartoons. "Now this is a picture of a molecule. A molecule is a very, very small thing. Too small to see with your eyes, but it's very important." "Mr. Whitmore?" Victoria interrupted. Her voice was calm, conversational. "Your SEC filing from last quarter mentions a proprietary delivery mechanism for your oncology pipeline. Could you elaborate on how it addresses the bioavailability issues that caused your 2019 trial failure? Specifically, I'm curious about the lipid nanoparticle formulation and whether you've resolved the aggregation problems that led to the FDA's clinical hold." The room went dead silent. Raymond's finger froze over the remote. The CFO's smirk vanished. "I'm also curious," Victoria continued, "about the $47 million discrepancy between your reported R&D expenditure and your actual patent filing activity over the past 18 months. Your 10K shows a 23% increase in research spending, but your patent applications are down 15%. That's a significant divergence. How do those figures reconcile?" Raymond's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at his CFO, who had gone pale. He looked at his other executives, who were suddenly very interested in their notepads. Those are complex matters," Raymond finally managed. "Perhaps my chief scientific officer could explain the technical details at another time. I wouldn't want to bore you with the specifics." "I'm not bored," Victoria said. "I'm fascinated. Please continue." Raymond set down the remote. His jaw tightened. I think we might be getting off track here. These complex financial matters are beyond the scope of our discussion today. Beyond whose scope? The question hung in the air. Raymond's eyes narrowed. Perhaps we should focus on more appropriate topics. He emphasized the word in a way that made its meaning unmistakable. Victoria opened her briefcase and removed a folder. I'd also like to discuss the 3 executives of color who resigned from senior positions in the past 2 years. Jameel Washington, Director of Clinical Operations, Michelle Torres, VP of Regulatory Affairs, and David Chen, Head of Research Development. Your press releases cited personal reasons and cultural fit issues. Could you elaborate? Raymond's face flushed red. Those were personnel matters, confidential. I've spoken with all 3 of them. The color drained from Raymond's face. That's impossible. They signed NDAs. NDAs that prohibit them from discussing trade secrets and proprietary information. They say nothing about discussing workplace culture or management behavior. Victoria paused. The things they told me were illuminating. Raymond stood up abruptly. I think we need to take a break. James, have someone bring coffee. He turned to Victoria with a smile that looked physically painful. How do you take yours? Lots of cream and sugar, I bet. The racist implication sat in the air like poison gas. The heavy man with the red face looked down at the table. The CFO suddenly became very interested in his phone. One executive, an older man with silver hair and a weak chin, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but no one said anything. No one challenged it. No one stood up for basic human decency. Victoria closed her folder. Before we continue, I'd like to see your diversity and inclusion statistics for executive positions, specifically retention rates for minority hires over the past 5 years. Raymond's smile became even more forced. We have a diversity officer who handles those matters, Marcus Phillips. He can walk you through our initiatives. He pressed a button on his phone. Jessica, send Marcus up here immediately. While they waited, the executives made small talk among themselves, conspicuously excluding Victoria from the conversation. They discussed golf handicaps and vacation homes and wine collections. They laughed at inside jokes she wasn't meant to understand. Victoria sat in silence, observing everything. 5 minutes later, the door opened. A black man in his 40s entered. He was the first person of color Victoria had seen above service level in the entire building. His suit was nice but not expensive. His tie was slightly crooked. His smile was professional but tired. The kind of tired that came from years of fighting battles he knew he couldn't win. Marcus, Raymond said, his voice dripping with false warmth. Thanks for joining us. This is Victoria. She has some questions about our diversity initiatives. Marcus's eyes met Victoria's. Something flickered between them. Recognition of shared experience. An unspoken understanding. Of course, Marcus said. He pulled out a tablet and began a presentation. Whitmore Pharmaceuticals is committed to fostering an inclusive environment, he recited. The words had the hollow sound of a script repeated too many times. Our hiring of underrepresented minorities has increased 8% year over year. We've implemented mentorship programs, unconscious bias training, and employee resource groups. What's the retention rate? Victoria asked. Marcus hesitated. His eyes darted to Raymond, then back to Victoria. I don't have those specific figures immediately available. What about promotion pathways? How many people of color have moved into senior leadership in the past 5 years? We've implemented programs that we believe will bear fruit in the... How many, Marcus? The room went silent. Marcus stood frozen, the tablet trembling slightly in his hands. Victoria saw it then. The fear, the conflict. He wanted to tell her the truth, but the truth would cost him his job. Raymond interrupted. We're making progress. Rome wasn't built in a day. He waved his hand dismissively. Thank you, Marcus. That will be all. Marcus gathered his things. As he walked past Victoria's chair, he stumbled slightly. A folded piece of paper fell from his pocket onto the floor near her feet. Oh, sorry, he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. Clumsy of me. He left without picking it up. Victoria waited until the door closed. Then she casually dropped her pen, and when she bent to retrieve it, she palmed the folded paper. In the bathroom later, she would read it. They're hiding everything. 3 executives didn't resign. They were forced out. The real numbers are in Harrison's private server. Password is Whitmore wins 2024. Be careful. They're watching. But that was later. Right now, the door opened again, and 5 more executives entered. All white, all male, all in their 50s and 60s. The air in the room changed immediately, energy and authority flowing toward the newcomers. Raymond sprang to his feet, transformed. He greeted each man with a firm handshake, a backslap, a genuine smile. Bill, how was the Bahamas? Jim, did your grandson get into Princeton? Tom, we still on for golf Saturday? The camaraderie was obvious and exclusive. These were Raymond's peers, his equals, his club. Victoria sat unacknowledged for 4 full minutes while the men laughed and joked about golf handicaps and stock options and some hilarious thing that happened at the charity gala last weekend. Finally, oddly, Raymond seemed to remember she existed. "Oh, gentlemen," he said, turning toward Victoria. "This is Victoria. She's here for diversity purposes. Not Ms. Williams, not a potential investor, just Victoria, reduced to a first name and an assumed agenda." The executives offered perfunctory nods. 2 didn't make eye contact at all. 1, a man with a nameplate reading James Crawford, leaned toward his colleague and whispered with deliberate audibility, "Diversity quota. Play along and she'll be gone by lunch." His colleague chuckled. Victoria heard every word. Her pen made a small mark in her notebook. "Perhaps," Raymond said, turning to Victoria with exaggerated patience, "you'd like to share your story with the group. I'm sure everyone would be interested in hearing about your journey, your struggles, your overcoming." The implication was crystal clear. Her value in this room was as entertainment, a token, a box to check, not as a business equal. Victoria closed her notebook. "I'd prefer to discuss your competitive positioning relative to Merck's oncology pipeline, specifically your strategy for the HER2 positive breast cancer market given their recent FDA approval." Raymond's smile tightened. "That's not really what everyone is interested in. We have plenty of financial analysts for those discussions. What we'd like to hear is your perspective as a..." He let the sentence hang. "As a what, Mr. Whitmore?" Raymond's face flushed. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. "As a member of the community," Raymond finished lamely. "We value diverse perspectives." "I see." Victoria's voice was ice. "And what perspective would you like? The perspective of someone who graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School, the perspective of someone who has completed over $40 billion in pharmaceutical transactions, or the perspective of someone you assumed was a janitor because of the color of her skin?" The room went dead silent. Raymond's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The door swung open, breaking the tension. A white man in his 60s entered wearing a suit that cost more than most cars. His presence immediately commanded the room. Even Raymond straightened up. "Alan," Raymond's voice carried relief and genuine warmth. "So glad you could make it. Alan Whitmore." Victoria recognized him from her research. Raymond's cousin, major shareholder, the money behind the throne. The 2 men embraced briefly. Raymond guided Alan around the room, making personal introductions. Each executive received a handshake, eye contact, acknowledgement of their humanity. Then Raymond turned toward Victoria. Their eyes met. Victoria extended her hand, the same professional gesture she had extended thousands of times, the same gesture that had sealed deals worth billions of dollars. Raymond looked at her hand, he looked at her face, and then with deliberate slowness, he placed both of his hands behind his back. "I already told you," he said, his voice carrying through the silent room. "I don't shake hands with janitors." He smiled, playing to his audience. "Building maintenance is on the 2nd floor. I don't know why you're still here, but I have real business to conduct." The room held its breath. Some executives looked away, faces red with second-hand embarrassment. Others smirked, complicit in the humiliation. James Crawford actually laughed out loud. Alan Whitmore frowned slightly but said nothing. Victoria lowered her hand. 20 years. 20 years of clawing her way up through a world that told her every day she didn't belong. 20 years of swallowed insults and bitten tongues and rage transformed into fuel. This moment was not new. But today was different. Today Victoria held power. Raymond Whitmore couldn't imagine. Power his prejudice had blinded him to completely. Without breaking eye contact with Raymond, Victoria reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She typed a single word and pressed send. Execute. "If you will excuse me," she said, rising from her chair, "I need to use the restroom." Raymond waved dismissively. "Down the hall on the left. Try not to get lost. I know these buildings can be confusing." More laughter from the executives. Victoria gathered her grandmother's briefcase and walked out of the room with measured steps. She did not hurry. She did not slam the door. She did not give them the satisfaction of seeing any emotion at all. The bathroom was empty. Victoria entered a stall, locked the door, and allowed herself 3 deep breaths. Not from distress, from focus. She dialed David's number. "It's me. Initiate phase 1. "Confirmed? Investment or withdrawal?" "Full withdrawal." Begin market signals immediately. Make it look organic. Concerned analysts asking questions. Worried investors seeking guidance. Nothing traceable to us. Understood. Documentation package. Prepare it. I recorded everything. They gave us exactly what we came for. She paused. And David, find everything you can about Marcus Phillips, the diversity officer. I think he wants to help. On it, Victoria. Are you okay? She looked at herself in the mirror. The same face that had been dismissed and diminished for decades looked back at her. But behind the calm exterior, something fierce was burning. I'm better than okay, she said. I'm about to show Raymond Whitmore what happens when you judge someone by the color of their skin instead of the content of their portfolio. She ended the call and unfolded the note Marcus had dropped. The password, the server location, the evidence of 3 forced resignations covered up with NDAs and severance packages. Victoria memorized the information and flushed the paper. Then she pulled out her phone again and dialed another number. Jennifer, it's Victoria. I need a favor. I need you to access Whitmore's private server remotely. Password is Whitmore Wins 2024. Download everything about the executive departures over the past 3 years. That's borderline illegal, Victoria. It's whistleblower investigation. Marcus Phillips, their diversity officer, gave me access. We have authorization. Give me 20 minutes. Victoria looked at her reflection one more time. Her grandmother had cleaned houses for 40 years, scrubbing floors for people who never learned her name. Today, her granddaughter was about to scrub something far more important. She walked back to the conference room. The mood had shifted. Several executives were checking their phones with concerned expressions. Raymond was hunched over his laptop, frowning at something on the screen. Is something wrong? Victoria asked pleasantly, taking her seat. Raymond looked up. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by something else. Confusion, the beginning of fear. Nothing to concern yourself with, he said. Just some market movement. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went pale. Sir, his assistant appeared in the doorway. The board is calling, all of them. They want to know what's happening with the stock. Raymond stood up abruptly. I need to handle this. We're done here. Actually, Victoria said calmly, I think we should continue our conversation in private, Mr. Whitmore. I have a few more things to discuss. Something in her voice made Raymond pause. He really looked at her for perhaps the first time. Fine, he snapped. My office, 2 minutes. He stormed out. Victoria followed at her own pace. Raymond's office was everything the conference room was not. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the Boston skyline. Photographs on the wall of Raymond with senators, governors, celebrities, and not a single person of color in any of them. Raymond was behind his desk phone pressed to his ear. What do you mean, we're down 6%? There's been no announcement, no news. Find out what's happening and fix it. He slammed down the phone and glared at Victoria. What do you want? Make it quick. Victoria closed the door behind her. I'd like to review my experience at Whitmore today, she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, but underneath steel. Raymond crossed his arms. I don't have time for... I was mistaken for a janitor upon arrival. I was directed to a waiting area with plastic chairs while white visitors were served coffee in your VIP lounge. I was kept waiting for 45 minutes. I was presented with a presentation designed for children. I was repeatedly asked if I could follow along. I was interrupted when discussing financial matters. I was referred to only by my first name while every white male in the room received formal acknowledgement. I was told my perspective was only valuable as a diversity token. Raymond's phone buzzed frantically. He ignored it. And finally, Victoria continued, I was explicitly refused a handshake because in your words, you don't shake hands with janitors. Now listen here. I've recorded our entire interaction. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. Every word you said today is documented. Raymond's face drained of color. I also have documentation from your own internal servers about the 3 executives of color you forced out over the past 2 years. The real reasons. The threatened lawsuits. The settlement payments. Everything. How did you... It doesn't matter how. What matters is what happens next. Victoria's eyes locked onto his. Check your computer, Mr. Whitmore. Search my name. Victoria Williams. Williams Capital Partners. Raymond hesitated. Then he turned to his keyboard and began typing. Victoria watched his face as the results loaded. Confusion first, then shock, then something that looked remarkably like terror. Victoria Williams, founder and CEO of Williams Capital Partners. Net worth $47 billion. One of the most powerful black-owned investment firms in America. known for withdrawing investments from companies with toxic cultures. A photograph of Victoria filled his screen. Designer suit, standing in front of the New York Stock Exchange, power radiating from every pixel. Raymond looked at the screen, then at Victoria, then back at the screen. That's... Me, Victoria confirmed. The janitor. Raymond's legs gave out. He collapsed into his chair. Williams Capital was considering a $2 billion investment in Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, Victoria said. We were also exploring a potential acquisition, full buyout. Your company under new management that actually values talent, regardless of what they look like. Raymond made a strangled sound. I spent 6 months researching your company. The financials were impressive. The drug pipeline was promising. Everything checked out on paper. She leaned forward. But I've learned that paper doesn't tell you about culture. Culture reveals itself in how people treat those they think are beneath them. She stood. And you, Mr. Whitmore, just showed me exactly who you are. Raymond's phone exploded with notifications. His computer pinged with urgent emails. Through the glass wall of his office, Victoria could see employees clustering around monitors, faces anxious. Ms. Williams, Raymond said, and suddenly his voice was completely different, desperate, pleading. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If I had known who you were, that's exactly the problem, Victoria interrupted. You didn't know, and you showed me how you treat people you think don't matter. She picked up her grandmother's briefcase. That tells me everything I need to know about your company. She walked toward the door. Raymond scrambled to his feet and blocked her path. Please, let's discuss this. I'm sure we can come to some arrangement. Everyone has a price. Name it, whatever you want. I want basic human dignity to be the default, not a privilege reserved for people who look like you. I can change. The company can change. Just give me a chance. Victoria looked at him. Really looked at this man who had dismissed her, demeaned her, refused to shake her hand. The time for chances was when you thought I was nobody, she said quietly. You had the opportunity to treat a stranger with basic respect. You chose differently. She stepped around him. Raymond grabbed her arm. The moment his fingers closed around her sleeve, something shifted. Through the glass wall, employees in the hallway stopped moving. Phones were raised. Eyes were watching. Victoria looked down at his hand, then up at his face. Mr. Whitmore, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the glass. Remove your hand from my arm. Raymond released her, immediately awareness of the witnesses flooding his face. The board will hear about this, he sputtered. All of it. The grabbed arm, the recorded conversations, everything. I certainly hope so. Victoria straightened her blazer. Goodbye, Mr. Whitmore. She opened the door and walked out. The corridors of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals had transformed. Employees clustered around computer screens, faces pale. The stock ticker on the lobby monitors flashed red, down 12% and falling. Whispers followed Victoria like a wave. Did you hear someone's pulling out? The whole market's talking. Who is that woman? In the lobby. Brittany, the receptionist, was staring at her phone with wide eyes. She looked up as Victoria passed. Ma'am, the custodial interview. I'm so sorry I didn't know. Victoria didn't slow down. Near the entrance, she saw George Washington, the elderly janitor, leaning on his cart. Their eyes met. Victoria stopped. You were right, she said. They wanted me to leave. I didn't. George's weathered face creased into a smile. I knew you wouldn't. He hesitated. Whatever you're doing, give 'em hell. I intend to. Victoria reached into her briefcase and pulled out a business card. Call this number on Monday. Ask for David Park. Tell him Victoria sent you. George looked at the card. His eyes went wide. Ma'am, I'm 67 years old. I'm not looking for boom. You told me you have a chemistry degree from Howard University, 1975. You applied for lab positions here for 5 years, and they told you that you weren't the right fit. Victoria pressed the card into his hand. You've spent 40 years being told what you can't be. I'm offering you a chance to finally be what you always were. George's eyes filled with tears. Why, you don't know me. I know enough. Victoria touched his shoulder gently. I know that my grandmother cleaned houses for 40 years, too. I know that people like us don't get many chances, and I know that when we do, we have to take them. She walked out of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals for the last time. Her Honda Accord was waiting where she had left it. The same modest car that had caused the security guard to dismiss her hours earlier. She got in, placed her grandmother's briefcase on the passenger seat, and sat in silence for a moment. Her phone buzzed. David. Victoria, it's done. Market signals deployed. Stock down 15% and accelerating. Press is starting to ask questions. Board members are calling each other in panic. And Jennifer found everything on the server. The documentation on the forced resignations is damning. We have them. Good. Prepare the full withdrawal statement for release in 1 hour. 1 hour, Victoria, that's going to cause a bloodbath. I know. Silence on the line. Are you sure about this? Victoria looked through her windshield at the gleaming tower of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. Through the glass walls, she could see people running. Raymond's face appeared briefly at a window phone, pressed to his ear, expression frantic. She thought about the conference room, the cartoon presentation, the refused handshake, the word janitor spat like a curse. She thought about George Washington and his chemistry degree. 40 years of cleaning floors for people who never bothered to learn his name. She thought about Destiny, the intern, afraid to speak up, afraid to lose her chance. She thought about Marcus Phillips slipping her that note at risk of everything he had. She thought about her grandmother carrying this same briefcase to clean houses, scrubbing toilets, so her granddaughter could one day clean up something far more important. Release it, Victoria said. Release everything. She ended the call and started the car. Behind her, the stock ticker on the lobby monitors flashed. Down 18%. Victoria pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward the city carrying 40 years of her grandmother's dignity in a worn leather briefcase. And in boardrooms across Boston, phones were ringing. The news hit Wall Street at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Williams Capital Partners announces full withdrawal from Whitmore Pharmaceuticals investment discussions, citing concerns about corporate culture and leadership integrity. Within seconds, trading algorithms detected the announcement. Within minutes, human traders followed. Within an hour, Whitmore Pharmaceuticals had lost 23% of its market value. $2.7 billion. Gone. Raymond Whitmore stood in his office watching the numbers fall. His phone had not stopped ringing since Victoria Williams walked out his door. Board members, shareholders, journalists, his wife, his lawyer, everyone wanted answers he did not have. How bad is it? James Crawford asked from the doorway. Raymond did not turn around. We've lost more money in the last 60 minutes than we made all of last quarter. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ isn't going to help us. Raymond finally turned. His face was gray. His hands were shaking. Get everyone into the main conference room. Now. Everyone. 12 minutes later, every senior executive at Whitmore Pharmaceuticals sat around the table where they had laughed at Victoria Williams just hours earlier. Nobody was laughing now. Someone tell me how this happened, Raymond said. His voice was barely controlled. Someone explain to me how a routine diversity meeting turned into a financial catastrophe. Silence. Anyone? James Crawford cleared his throat. Sir, I've been looking into Williams Capital Partners. They're not just any investment firm. They manage $47 billion. They've pulled investments from 6 companies in the past 5 years. Every single one of those companies lost at least 30% of their value within 90 days. Why didn't we know this before the meeting? The appointment was listed as V. Williams Potential Investor. No company affiliation, no background provided. James hesitated. You said it was a diversity obligation. You said to treat it accordingly. Raymond slammed his fist on the table. Don't you dare put this on me. Sir, with respect, you refused to shake her hand. You called her a janitor, in front of witnesses. She looked like a janitor. She was wearing cheap clothes and carrying an old briefcase. How was I supposed to know? The CFO, a thin man named Peter Morrison, spoke up. Raymond, we have a bigger problem. The withdrawal announcement mentions concerns about corporate culture and leadership integrity. That's not just about money. That's about you. Raymond's face went red. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that Williams Capital isn't just pulling their investment. They're sending a message, and the market is listening. Raymond's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and his face went pale. It's the board chair, he said. Margaret Chen. He answered the call. Margaret, I can explain. The voice on the other end was cold enough to freeze the room. Raymond, I've just spoken with 3 other board members. We're calling an emergency session for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Your presence is required. Margaret, this is all a misunderstanding. If you'll just let me... We've received documentation, Raymond. Recordings, internal communications. Evidence of systematic discrimination over the past 3 years. Raymond's blood ran cold. Documentation from who? It was sent anonymously to every board member simultaneously. Time-stamped. Verified. Damning. Margaret paused. We're also receiving calls from journalists. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNBC. They all have the same documentation. That's impossible. That information is confidential. It was on my private server. Then I suggest you find out how it became public. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. Raymond lowered the phone slowly. His hand was trembling so badly he nearly dropped it. They have everything, he whispered. The recordings, the internal documents, everything. James Crawford went white. Everything. And the settlement payments, the NDAs, the performance reviews we doctored. Everything. The room erupted, executives shouting over each other, blame flying in every direction, accusations and denials mixing into chaos. Raymond raised his hand. Enough? Everyone shut up. Silence fell. I need to talk to Victoria Williams, directly. Whatever she wants, whatever it takes, we need to make this go away. Peter Morrison shook his head. Raymond, you can't just call her. She runs a $47 billion company. She's not going to take your call. Then find someone who knows someone. Call in every favor we have. I don't care what it costs. Get me a meeting with Victoria Williams today. Across the city, Victoria sat in the Williams Capital Partners conference room surrounded by her executive team. Screens on every wall displayed real-time data, stock prices, news feeds, social media trends, the digital battlefield where reputations lived and died. Whitmore is down 26% and falling, David Park reported. Market analysts are downgrading their rating. 3 major institutional investors have already announced they're reviewing their positions. Victoria nodded. What about the documentation release? Jennifer Chen, the firm's head of intelligence, pulled up a timeline. Sent to all board members at 11:52 a.m., sent to major media outlets at 12:15 p.m., first news story published at 12:34 p.m., currently trending on financial Twitter. Any response from Whitmore's PR team? They released a statement 20 minutes ago. Quote, Whitmore Pharmaceuticals is committed to fostering an inclusive workplace and takes all allegations seriously. We are conducting an internal review and will have no further comment at this time. End quote. Standard crisis management boilerplate, Victoria said. They're buying time. Her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and smiled grimly. Speaking of which, Raymond Whitmore is trying to reach me. He's called 6 times in the last hour. His assistant has called 12 times. His lawyer has called twice. Are you going to talk to him? Eventually, but not yet. Let him sweat. David leaned forward. Victoria, I have to ask, how far are we taking this? The stock collapse is going to affect a lot of innocent people. Employees, shareholders who had nothing to do with Raymond's behavior. Victoria was quiet for a moment. She had thought about this. She had thought about little else since walking out of Whitmore's office. Do you know what Raymond said to me when I extended my hand? She asked. He said he doesn't shake hands with janitors. He said it loudly in front of a room full of people, and he smiled while he said it, like it was a joke, like I was a joke. She stood and walked to the window. My grandmother was a janitor, David. She cleaned houses for white families for 40 years. She scrubbed their floors and washed their dishes and raised their children, while her own daughter sat alone waiting for her to come home. And every night, she came home with her back aching and her hands raw, and she put every penny she earned into a jar because she believed that one day her granddaughter would sit at tables she was never allowed to approach. Victoria turned back to face her team. This isn't about revenge. This is about consequences. For decades, men like Raymond Whitmore have operated without consequences. They've discriminated and demeaned and destroyed careers, and nothing ever happened to them. The system protected them. The market rewarded them. And anyone who complained was told to be grateful for whatever crumbs they received. She walked back to her chair. That ends today, not because I'm angry, not because I want revenge, but because the only way to change systems is to make discrimination expensive. When companies see what happens to Whitmore, they'll think twice before treating the next black woman like she doesn't belong in their boardroom. David nodded slowly. So what's the end game? I want Raymond Whitmore removed as CEO. I want a complete overhaul of their executive leadership. I want binding commitments to diversity and inclusion with independent oversight. And I want the 3 executives they forced out to receive full compensation and public apologies. And if they refuse, Victoria's expression hardened. Then Whitmore Pharmaceuticals becomes a case study in what happens when companies choose prejudice over profit. The market will do the rest. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked at the caller ID and raised an eyebrow. Interesting, Alan Whitmore is calling, Raymond's cousin. The one who was in the room when Raymond refused to shake your hand. The very same? He didn't say a word at the time, just watched. Victoria considered for a moment, then answered the call. "This is Victoria Williams." "Ms. Williams, this is Alan Whitmore. I believe we met briefly this morning under unfortunate circumstances." "I remember. You watched your cousin call me a janitor and said nothing." A pause. "I deserve that, and I apologize. I should have spoken up. I didn't, and that makes me complicit." "Yes, it does. So why are you calling?" "Because I'm not Raymond, and because I've been on the board of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals for 15 years, and I've watched my cousin drive away talented people for reasons that had nothing to do with their abilities. I've stayed silent too long. I don't want to stay silent anymore." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "I'm listening." "The board is meeting tomorrow morning. Emergency session. Raymond doesn't know it yet, but there are enough votes to remove him as CEO. What I need to know is whether that changes anything for Williams Capital." "That depends on who replaces him." "That's why I'm calling. I want to propose something unprecedented. I want Williams Capital to have input on the new leadership selection. I want you personally involved in reshaping Whitmore's corporate culture." Victoria was silent for a long moment. This was unexpected. This was potentially everything she wanted delivered without a prolonged fight, which made her suspicious. "Why would you offer that Raymond is your family?" Alan sighed heavily. "Raymond is my cousin, but he's also been an embarrassment to our family name for years. My grandfather built Whitmore Pharmaceuticals on the principle that science should serve everyone. Raymond has turned it into a country club for people who look like him. I'm tired of watching him destroy what my grandfather built." "And the other board members, will they support this?" "Margaret Chen is already on board. So are Thomas Yang and Patricia Morrison. With my vote, that's a majority. We can remove Raymond tomorrow and begin the restructuring process immediately." Victoria looked at David. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate the call. But I've been in enough boardrooms to know that people say a lot of things when they're scared. Actions matter more than words. Then tell me what actions you need to see. I want the documentation about the forced resignations released publicly. Full disclosure. I want the 3 executives who were pushed out to receive written apologies and compensation packages worth twice their original settlements. And I want a commitment in writing to implement diversity standards developed by Williams Capital with quarterly audits and financial penalties for non-compliance." Silence on the line. Victoria could almost hear Alan calculating the cost. "That's aggressive," he finally said. "That's the minimum. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Whitmore. This is a test. You said you want to do the right thing. Now prove it." Another long pause. "I'll present your terms to the board tomorrow. You'll have an answer by noon." "I look forward to it." Victoria ended the call and set down her phone. "Well, David said. "That was unexpected." "Don't celebrate yet. Alan Whitmore is a businessman. He's calculating whether it's cheaper to meet our demands or fight us. We need to keep the pressure on until he decides that cooperation is the only viable option." "What do you need from us?" "Continue the media campaign. Make sure every financial outlet understands that this isn't about one bad meeting. It's about a pattern of discrimination that goes back years. And reach out to the 3 executives who were forced out. Tell them we're prepared to support them publicly if they're willing to share their stories." Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Ms. Williams, this is Marcus Phillips, the diversity officer from Whitmore. I need to talk to you. It's urgent. They're planning something. Please call me." Victoria read the message twice. Then she dialed the number. Marcus answered on the first ring. His voice was hushed, panicked. "Ms. Williams, thank you for calling. I don't have much time. They're watching me." "Slow down, Marcus. What's happening?" "After you left, Raymond called an emergency meeting with legal. They're talking about discrediting you, finding dirt on Williams Capital. They mentioned hiring private investigators." Victoria's expression didn't change. "Let them try. They won't find anything." "That's not all. They're also talking about destroying evidence. The server files, the settlement documents, everything that proves what they did to those executives. They want to wipe it all for the board meeting tomorrow." Victoria sat up straight. "Tonight, after everyone goes home. Raymond's planning to do it himself. He doesn't trust anyone else." "Marcus, why are you telling me this?" A long pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because I've worked there for 8 years. 8 years of being the diversity hire. The token. The one they point to when anyone asks about inclusion. 8 years of watching talented black people get pushed out while mediocre white men got promoted. 8 years of writing reports that nobody read and implementing programs that nobody followed." He took a shaky breath. I have a daughter, Ms. Williams. She's 12, smart as a whip, wants to be a scientist. And I keep asking myself, what kind of world am I leaving her? A world where she has to smile and nod while people like Raymond Whitmore call her a janitor. Marcus, what you're doing is brave. It's also dangerous. If they find out, I know, but I can't stay silent anymore. Not after what I saw today. Not after watching you stand there and take it with so much dignity. His voice broke. My grandfather marched in Selma. My grandmother was arrested for sitting at a lunch counter. They didn't stay silent. They didn't play it safe. And here I am, hiding in a bathroom, afraid to lose a job where they don't even respect me. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. This man, this frightened man hiding in a corporate bathroom, was risking everything. Not for money, not for power. For the same reason her grandmother had saved every penny, for the next generation. Marcus, listen to me carefully. You are not alone. Whatever happens, Williams Capital will protect you. If you lose your job, we'll find you a better one. If they try to retaliate, we'll support you legally and financially. But right now, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to get access to that server before Raymond destroys the evidence. Can you do that? I don't have administrative access, but I know someone who does. Terrell Washington. He's in IT. Good man. He's been looking for an excuse to leave for months. Can you trust him? With my life. Then contact him now. Tell him Williams Capital will guarantee him employment regardless of what happens. Tell him we need those files backed up to an external location before midnight tonight. Okay, yes, I can do that. And Marcus, thank you. What you're doing matters, more than you know. She ended the call and looked at her team. We have until midnight. Raymond's planning to destroy the evidence. David was already typing. I'll alert our legal team. If we can prove destruction of evidence, that's obstruction. It changes everything. Get it done. And David, find out everything you can about Terrell Washington. If he comes through for us, I want him taken care of. The clock on the wall read 3:47 p.m., 8 hours until midnight. At 5:23 p.m., Raymond Whitmore sat alone in his office watching the sunset over Boston. His desk was covered with printouts, stock analyses, news articles, social media posts. Every one of them painted him as a villain. His phone rang, his wife Caroline. Raymond, the club called. They're asking if we're still hosting the charity gala next month. Apparently there have been concerns raised by other members. Concerns. What kind of concerns? They didn't say specifically, but Patricia Henderson mentioned that perhaps we should step back from the planning committee until things settle down. Raymond closed his eyes. The charity gala. He and Caroline had hosted it for 15 years. It was their event. Their legacy. Tell them we're still hosting. Nothing has changed. Raymond, what's happening? The news is saying terrible things about you. About the company. Margaret Chen called me. She sounded cold. It's a misunderstanding. It'll blow over. A misunderstanding. They're saying you refused to shake hands with an investor because you thought she was a janitor. They're saying you discriminate against minorities. They're saying, I know what they're saying. Raymond's voice cracked. I know, Caroline. And most of it is lies. That woman set me up. She came into my company dressed like a cleaning lady specifically so she could play the victim when I treated her accordingly. Silence on the line. Raymond, Caroline said slowly, did you refuse to shake her hand? She looked like staff. How was I supposed to know she was a billionaire? She drove a Honda. She was carrying a ratty old briefcase. So you did refuse to shake her hand? It wasn't... You're twisting my words. I'm not twisting anything. Caroline's voice had changed, hardened. I've been married to you for 32 years, Raymond. I've watched you charm clients and belittle employees. I've seen how you treat the staff at our home versus how you treat our dinner guests. I always told myself it didn't mean anything, that you were just under pressure, that you didn't really see people that way. Caroline. But you do, don't you? You really do see some people as less than others. Not because of what they've accomplished, but because of what they look like. That's not fair. Our housekeeper, Maria, she's worked for us for 18 years. Have you ever once asked about her family, her children, her life outside of our house? Raymond opened his mouth, closed it. He realized he didn't know if Maria had children. He didn't even know her last name. I didn't think so. Caroline's voice was ice. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight. I need time to think. Caroline, please, don't do this. Not now. I need you. You need me for the optics, Raymond. You always have. The devoted wife standing beside you at press conferences, the elegant hostess at your parties, but have you ever actually needed me as a person, as a partner? The line went dead. Raymond stared at his phone. His hands were shaking. His marriage, his company, his reputation, everything he had built over 40 years was crumbling around him. And it was all because of one woman, one black woman he had assumed was nobody. He picked up his desk phone and dialed security. "This is Raymond Whitmore. I need you to clear the building by 8 p.m. tonight. Everyone out? I'll be working late and I don't want to be disturbed." "Yes, sir. Should I leave anyone on duty?" "No, I want the building completely empty. Is that understood?" "Understood, sir." Raymond hung up. He turned to his computer and began making preparations. If he was going down, he wasn't going down alone, and he certainly wasn't leaving any evidence behind. At 7:15 p.m., Marcus Phillips sat in his car in the Whitmore Pharmaceuticals parking lot watching employees stream out of the building. His hands were sweating. His heart was pounding. He had never done anything like this in his life. His phone buzzed. A text from Terrell Washington. "I'm in position. Service entrance. Security camera loop activated. You have 20 minutes. Marcus took a deep breath. He thought about his daughter, her bright eyes, her dreams of becoming a scientist, the world she would inherit. He got out of the car and walked toward the building. The halls were empty. His footsteps echoed on the polished floors. He passed the conference room where Victoria Williams had sat hours earlier, enduring insults with grace he could barely comprehend. He found Terrell in the server room, fingers flying across a keyboard. "How much time do we need?" Marcus asked. "Already halfway done. The backup is going to an encrypted cloud server Williams Capital set up. They won't be able to trace it, and they won't be able to delete it." "What about Raymond? He said he's coming in tonight." "I know. That's why we're hurrying." Terrell's eyes never left the screen. 3 years of settlement documents, performance reviews, internal emails, all of it. Everything that proves what they did. Everything. Terrell glanced at Marcus. "You know there's no coming back from this, right? Once we do this, we're done here, both of us." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Marcus thought about the conference room, about Victoria Williams extending her hand, about Raymond's sneer as he refused to take it. "I'm more than okay," he said. "I'm proud." At 9:43 p.m., Raymond Whitmore walked into the server room to find it empty. He sat down at the main terminal and entered his administrator password. The screen flickered to life. For the next 2 hours, he systematically deleted files. Settlement agreements, performance evaluations, internal communications, everything that documented years of discrimination, everything that could be used against him. He didn't know that every file he deleted had already been copied. He didn't know that Victoria Williams was watching in real time as the backup completed. He didn't know that his destruction of evidence was being documented, time-stamped, and prepared for submission to federal authorities. At 11:47 p.m., exactly 12 hours after the Williams Capital withdrawal announcement crashed his stock, Raymond Whitmore leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time all day. It was done. The evidence was destroyed. Tomorrow he would face the board with nothing but his word against theirs. And Raymond Whitmore had spent 40 years perfecting his word. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. "Dear Mr. Whitmore, thank you for confirming obstruction of justice. Every file you deleted tonight was backed up in real time to secure external servers. Your actions have been documented and time-stamped. This evidence has been shared with the SEC, the EEOC, and federal prosecutors. See you in court. Victoria Williams." Raymond's smile died. His hands began to shake. He read the message again, and again, and again. And then Raymond Whitmore, the man who never shook hands with janitors, put his head in his hands and began to cry. At 11:52 p.m., Victoria Williams stood at her office window watching the lights of Boston twinkle in the darkness. Her phone rang. David Park. "It's done? We have everything. Raymond spent 2 hours deleting files that were already backed up. The metadata proves destruction of evidence. Our lawyers say it's textbook obstruction." "What about Marcus and Terrell?" "Already out of the building? Safe. I've arranged for both of them to start at Williams Capital on Monday. New positions, better salaries, full benefits." "Good. They earned it?" "Victoria, I have to ask. When you walked into Whitmore this morning, did you expect any of this?" Victoria looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Raymond Whitmore was realizing that his world had ended. Somewhere out there, Marcus Phillips was hugging his daughter, finally proud of the father he had become. Somewhere out there, George Washington, the janitor with the chemistry degree, was looking at a business card and wondering if his life was about to change. "I expected to find out who Raymond Whitmore really was," she said. "I expected to face the same disrespect I've faced my entire career. What I didn't expect was to find so many people inside that company who were desperate for someone to stand up. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, the board removes Raymond. Tomorrow, Whitmore Pharmaceuticals begins the long process of becoming what it should have been all along. And tomorrow, the business world learns that discrimination has a price. She ended the call and picked up her grandmother's briefcase. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new. But tonight, Victoria allowed herself one moment. One quiet moment to remember the woman who had carried this briefcase to clean houses for 40 years. The woman who had believed, against all evidence, that the world could change. "I did it, Grandma," Victoria whispered. "I sat at their table and then I flipped it over." Her phone buzzed one final time. A text from George Washington, the janitor. "Miss Williams, I called the number you gave me. They said to come in Monday for an interview. Is this real? After 40 years, is this really happening?" Victoria smiled and typed her response. "It's real, George. It's all real. Welcome to Williams Capital. Your grandmother and mine are smiling somewhere tonight." She sent the message and walked out into the darkness carrying 40 years of dignity in a worn leather briefcase. The next morning would change everything. The morning of the board meeting arrived with a cold rain falling over Boston. At 7:15 a.m., Raymond Whitmore sat in his car outside Whitmore Pharmaceuticals headquarters, unable to make himself go inside. He had not slept. He had not eaten. He had spent the entire night staring at Victoria Williams's text message, reading it over and over until the words burned themselves into his brain. Every file you deleted tonight was backed up in real time. His phone rang. His lawyer, Stephen Morrison. "Raymond, where are you? The board meeting starts in less than 2 hours." "I'm outside. I can't." "Stephen, they have everything. The deleted files, the obstruction, everything." "I know. We need to discuss strategy. Get in here now." Raymond ended the call but didn't move. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he watched employees hurrying into the building. The same employees who had laughed at his jokes yesterday. The same employees who had smirked when he refused to shake Victoria Williams's hand. None of them would meet his eyes today. He finally forced himself out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The security guard who had always greeted him with a smile now looked away awkwardly. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." Mr. Is it?" He pushed through the doors and headed for the elevator. His reflection stared back at him from the polished metal doors. He barely recognized the man he saw. Gray skin, hollow eyes, the look of someone watching his life collapse in slow motion. At 8:47 a.m., Raymond sat in the small conference room adjacent to the main boardroom with Stephen Morrison and 2 junior attorneys. "Walk me through my options," Raymond said. Stephen exchanged glances with his colleagues. "Honestly, Raymond, your options are limited. The evidence of obstruction is ironclad. They have timestamps, metadata backup logs. If this goes to federal prosecutors, you're looking at potential criminal charges. Criminal charges for deleting files on my own computer. For destroying evidence related to discrimination complaints that were under internal review. That's obstruction, and with the EEOC already involved, it becomes federal obstruction." Stephen paused. "Raymond, I've known you for 20 years. I'm telling you this as a friend. You need to consider resignation." "Resignation?" Raymond's voice cracked. "I built this company. I've given 40 years of my life to Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. My family name is on the building." "Your family name is exactly why Alan is pushing for your removal. He doesn't want the Whitmore legacy associated with a discrimination scandal. Alan is behind this. Alan has the votes. Margaret Chen, Thomas Yang, Patricia Morrison, they're all aligned. The meeting this morning is a formality. They've already decided." Raymond stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "Then why am I even here if they've already decided? Why bother with the charade?" "Because they're offering you a choice. Resign with a severance package and a joint statement about pursuing other opportunities, or be removed for cause with full public disclosure of the evidence." "Blackmail. They're blackmailing me. They're giving you a way out that doesn't end with you in handcuffs. Take it, Raymond. For God's sake, take it." At 8:58 a.m., Raymond walked into the main boardroom. 12 faces stared back at him, some sympathetic, some hostile, some carefully neutral. At the head of the table sat Margaret Chen, the board chair. Her expression revealed nothing. "Please sit down, Raymond," Margaret said. He took his usual seat. It felt different today. The leather seemed colder. The table seemed farther away. "Before we begin," Margaret continued, "I want to acknowledge that this is a difficult moment. Raymond has served as CEO for 15 years. Under his leadership, Whitmore Pharmaceuticals has grown significantly. That contribution should not be forgotten." "But," Raymond said bitterly, "but leadership requires more than financial results. It requires integrity. It requires treating all people with dignity and respect. and recent events have raised serious concerns about whether those standards have been met. Alan Whitmore spoke next. His voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. Raymond, we've received extensive documentation about incidents spanning the past 5 years. Discrimination complaints that were suppressed, settlement payments that were hidden from the board, performance reviews that were manipulated to force out employees of color, and most recently destruction of evidence. That documentation was obtained illegally, Raymond protested. It was stolen from company servers. Actually, it wasn't, Margaret said. The files were backed up by an employee who had legitimate access to the server as part of his IT responsibilities. There was no theft, there was whistleblowing. Whistleblowing, you mean betrayal. I mean courage. Margaret's voice hardened. Terrell Washington came forward because he believed it was the right thing to do. Marcus Phillips came forward because he couldn't stay silent anymore. These are employees who risk their careers to expose wrongdoing. That's not betrayal. That's integrity. Raymond looked around the table, searching for allies. He found none. What about everything I've done for this company? The growth, the profits, the market position. Does none of that matter? It matters, Thomas Yang said quietly. He was the oldest board member, a man who had known Raymond's father. But Raymond, I watched you refuse to shake hands with an investor because you assumed she was a janitor. I watched you humiliate a brilliant woman in front of your entire executive team. And when I asked myself why the only answer I could find was the color of her skin. That's not fair. She was dressed like what? Like someone who doesn't deserve basic courtesy, like someone beneath your dignity. Thomas shook his head. I've known your family for 50 years. Your grandfather would be ashamed. The words hit Raymond like a physical blow. His grandfather, the man who had built Whitmore Pharmaceuticals from nothing, the man who had taught Raymond that success meant nothing without honor. You don't know what my grandfather would think, Raymond whispered. I knew him better than you did, Thomas replied. He hired my father when no one else would give a Chinese immigrant a chance. He believed that talent mattered more than background, that character mattered more than appearance. What happened to that legacy? Raymond, what happened to you? Raymond had no answer. At 9:23 a.m., Margaret Chen called for the vote. All those in favor of removing Raymond Whitmore as CEO effective immediately, please raise your hand. 9 hands went up. All those opposed? Raymond looked around the table, not a single hand. The motion carries, Margaret said. Raymond, your tenure as CEO of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals has ended. The words hung in the air. Final. Irrevocable. 40 years of work, 40 years of building and growing and fighting reduced to a single sentence. Raymond stood slowly. His legs felt weak, his vision blurred. You'll regret this, he said. All of you. When this company falls apart without me, you'll remember this moment. Perhaps, Margaret said, but we'll also remember the moment when we chose to do the right thing. That matters more. Raymond walked out of the boardroom without looking back. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. At 10:15 a.m., Victoria Williams received a call from Alan Whitmore. It's done. Raymond has been removed. Victoria was silent for a moment. She had expected to feel triumph, victory, justice. Instead, she felt something more complicated, sadness perhaps, or exhaustion. What happens now? She asked. The board has appointed Patricia Morrison as interim CEO. She's already begun reviewing all discrimination complaints and settlement agreements. We're preparing a public statement acknowledging the failures of the previous leadership and outlining our commitment to change. That's a start, but words are easy. What about actions? That's why I'm calling. The board would like to invite Williams Capital to participate in developing new diversity and inclusion standards for Whitmore. We want independent oversight, we want accountability, and frankly, we want your guidance. Victoria considered this. 24 hours ago, she had walked into Whitmore Pharmaceuticals expecting the same disrespect she had faced her entire career. She had received it in abundance, and now the same company was asking for her help. I'll need to think about it, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. First, the 3 executives who were forced out, Jamil Washington, Michelle Torres, and David Chen, receive full compensation plus damages along with public apologies. Done. Done. Second, Marcus Phillips and Terrell Washington are guaranteed protection from any retaliation. If they choose to stay at Whitmore, they receive promotions and raises. If they choose to leave, they receive severance packages equivalent to 2 years' salary. Done. Third, George Washington. Who? The janitor. He's worked at Whitmore for 40 years. He has a chemistry degree from Howard University that he was never allowed to use because no one would hire a black man for a lab position in 1975. I want him offered a position appropriate to his qualifications with back pay calculated from the date of his first application. Silence on the line. That's unusual, Alan finally said. That's justice. 40 years delayed, but justice nonetheless. Another pause. Victoria could almost hear Alan calculating. I'll present it to the board. Is there anything else? One more thing. I want to meet with your employees. All of them. Town hall style. I want them to hear directly from me why this matters. Why diversity isn't just a corporate buzzword, but a fundamental requirement for excellence. You want to address our entire workforce. I want to give them hope. I want them to know that change is possible, that the days of being dismissed and demeaned because of how they look are over. I'll make it happen when, tomorrow, the sooner the better, healing can't begin until people believe it's real. At 11:30 a.m., the news broke. Raymond Whitmore removed as CEO of Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. Board cites leadership failures and ongoing investigations. The stock, which had stabilized overnight, immediately jumped 8%. The market was voting with its wallet. In his empty office, Raymond watched the coverage on mute. His nameplate had already been removed from the door. His personal items were being packed into cardboard boxes by assistants who couldn't meet his eyes. His phone rang. His wife, Caroline. He almost didn't answer, but some desperate part of him still hoped. Caroline. I saw the news. I'm sorry, Raymond. Are you really? A long pause. I'm sorry for what you're going through, but I'm not sorry it happened. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. It will, eventually. Another pause. I'm coming by the house to pick up some things. I'll be there around 2. I'd prefer if you weren't there. Caroline, please, can we at least talk? We've been married for 32 years, Raymond. In all that time, when did we ever really talk? When did you ever ask about my thoughts, my feelings, my dreams? When did you ever see me as anything other than an accessory to your success? Raymond opened his mouth to protest, and realized he couldn't. That's what I thought, Caroline said. Goodbye, Raymond. I hope you find whatever it is you've been looking for all these years. I hope it was worth it. The line went dead. Raymond sat alone in his stripped office, surrounded by the debris of his former life, and wondered when exactly he had lost everything that mattered. At 2:45 p.m., Victoria's phone rang with an unexpected call. Miss Williams, this is Destiny Robinson, the intern from Whitmore. You gave me your card yesterday. Victoria smiled at the memory. The frightened young woman who had apologized for the receptionist's behavior. The MIT student who dreamed of becoming a scientist. Destiny, how are you holding up? It's been crazy here. Everyone's talking about what happened, about you, about Mr. Whitmore. Destiny's voice dropped to a whisper. Some people are scared. They think there's going to be layoffs. They think the company might not survive. The company will survive. It might even become better. Change is always frightening, but it's also necessary. That's actually why I'm calling. After you left yesterday, I started thinking about what you said, about remembering how they made me feel, about deserving better. And I wrote everything down, everything I've experienced in 3 months at Whitmore. The comments, the assumptions, the jokes that weren't really jokes, the way people looked at me when I walked into meetings. I have dates, times, names, everything. Victoria sat forward. Destiny, why are you telling me this? Because I think other people have stories too. The other interns, the junior employees, people who were afraid to say anything because they needed the job. But maybe now, with everything that's happening, maybe they'd be willing to talk. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that what happened to those 3 executives, the ones who got pushed out, that wasn't isolated. It's been happening for years, to lots of people, and if someone was willing to listen, really listen, I think the truth would come out. Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Destiny, what you're describing could be the foundation for a class action lawsuit. It could also make you a target. Are you sure you want to take that risk? My grandmother worked 3 jobs so I could go to MIT. She told me that education was power, that once I had knowledge, nobody could take it away. But she also told me that power means nothing if you're too afraid to use it. Destiny's voice strengthened. I'm not afraid, Ms. Williams, not anymore. Then let's talk, in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow afternoon? Yes, and Ms. Williams, I'm not coming alone. There are 6 other interns who want to share their stories. and at least a dozen other employees who've reached out to me since this morning." Victoria smiled. The seeds she had planted were already bearing fruit. "Bring them all. We have a lot of work to do." At 4:30 p.m., Marcus Phillips knocked on the door of Victoria's office. He had never been inside Williams Capital Partners' headquarters. The building was elegant, but not ostentatious, professional but warm. On the walls, he noticed artwork by black artists. In the hallways, he saw faces that looked like his. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged somewhere. "Marcus!" Victoria stood and extended her hand. "Thank you for coming." He shook it firmly. "Thank you for everything you've done. I still can't believe it worked." "It worked because people like you had the courage to act. I provided resources. You provided heart." Marcus sat down heavily. The exhaustion of the past 24 hours was catching up with him. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "I've worked at Whitmore for 8 years. It's all I know. And now everything's different." "Different can be good. Different can be better." Victoria leaned forward. "Marcus, I want to offer you a position at Williams Capital, head of corporate ethics and culture assessment. You'd be responsible for evaluating companies we're considering for investment, making sure they treat their people right before we give them our money." Marcus stared at her. "You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a mission. For 8 years, you've watched discrimination happen and felt powerless to stop it. Now you can be the one who stops it. Not at one company, but at every company we invest in. You'd have real power to create real change." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, your daughter is watching. Show her what her father can become when he's finally free to be himself." Marcus wiped his eyes. "Yes, God, yes. When do I start?" "Monday, but first I need you to do something for me." "Anything." "The town hall meeting at Whitmore tomorrow. I want you there. Not as a former employee, but as a representative of Williams Capital. I want those people to see what's possible. I want them to see that speaking up doesn't end careers. It creates them." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll be there." "Good. Now go home. Hug your daughter. Tell her that her father is a hero." At 6:15 p.m., Victoria received an unexpected visitor. "Ms. Williams," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "There's someone here to see you. He says his name is George Washington. He says you're expecting him." Victoria smiled. "Send him in." George entered hesitantly. He was wearing his best clothes, a suit that was clearly decades old but meticulously maintained. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. In his hand, he clutched Victoria's business card like a lifeline. "Mr. Washington, thank you for coming." "Ma'am, I don't understand what's happening. Your people called me this morning. They said something about a position, a laboratory position." His voice trembled. "That must be a mistake. I'm a janitor. I've been a janitor for 40 years. "You're a chemist," Victoria said gently. "You've always been a chemist. You just weren't allowed to be one." George's eyes filled with tears. "I applied to Whitmore's lab program every year for 5 years, 1975 to 1980. Every year they told me I wasn't the right fit. I knew what that meant. I just couldn't prove it." "I know. I've seen your applications, all 5 of them. Perfect test scores, glowing recommendations from your Howard professors. Rejection after rejection, without explanation." "How did you get those?" "The same server that held the evidence against Raymond Whitmore held records going back 50 years, including personnel files, including yours." George sat down slowly as if his legs couldn't support him anymore. 50 years, he whispered. "I was 22 years old when I first walked into that building with my degree and my dreams. 22 years old and so full of hope." Victoria moved to sit beside him. "Tell me about that day." George was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, lost in memory. I wore my best suit my mother had saved for months to buy it. I carried my diploma in a leather folder. I walked up to that reception desk and the woman looked at me like I was lost, like I must have wandered in by mistake. He laughed bitterly. "Sound familiar?" "Yes, it does." "She asked me if I was there to pick up trash. I said no, I was there for an interview, for the research assistant position. She looked at me like I'd said something crazy. Then she made a phone call, and a man came down. White man, nice suit. He took one look at me and said they'd already filled the position. But they hadn't. No, they hired 3 white candidates that same week. I know because I checked. I kept checking for years, watching who got hired, who got promoted. Always the same faces, never anyone who looked like me." Victoria took his hand. "George, I can't give you back 50 years. Nobody can. but I can give you tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after that. I'm 67 years old, ma'am. What can I possibly contribute now? Experience, wisdom, perspective, and most importantly, proof that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. Victoria squeezed his hand. Williams Capital is creating a new research division focused on pharmaceutical ethics. We need someone who understands both the science and the human cost of discrimination, someone who's lived it, someone who can make sure no young chemist ever has to spend 40 years cleaning floors because of the color of their skin. George's tears flowed freely now. My wife, she passed 5 years ago, cancer. She always told me I should have kept fighting, that I gave up too easily. I told her I had to be practical. I had to provide for our family. I told myself I'd made peace with it. Had you? No. The word came out as a sob. Every day I walked into that building and saw those laboratories. Every day I mopped those floors while white men half my age did work I could have done with my eyes closed. Every day I died a little inside. Victoria handed him a tissue. Then let's bring you back to life. At 8:00 p.m., Victoria finally went home. Her penthouse was quiet, empty. She had never married, never had children. Her work had always come first. Some nights, like tonight, she wondered if that had been the right choice. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. Saw you on the news? Your grandmother would be so proud. I'm proud too. Love you, baby girl. Victoria smiled and typed back. Love you too, Mama. Couldn't have done it without everything you and Grandma taught me. Another text came in this one from David. Final media tally for the day, 47 news articles, 12 TV segments, 3.2 million social media impressions. Whitmore's story is the top business news in the country. You did it. Victoria replied, we did it. Everyone who had the courage to speak up, everyone who refused to stay silent. This was a team effort. She set down her phone and picked up her grandmother's briefcase from where it sat on the coffee table. She ran her fingers over the worn leather, feeling the history embedded in every scratch. I wish you could see this, Grandma, she whispered. I wish you could see what your sacrifice made possible. The briefcase offered no reply, but Victoria felt something anyway, a warmth, a presence, as if her grandmother was sitting beside her, nodding in approval. Her phone rang one final time, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello, Ms. Williams. The voice was female, trembling unfamiliar. My name is Sarah Chen. I used to work at Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. I was Raymond Whitmore's executive assistant for 12 years. Victoria sat up straight. Sarah? Yes, I've heard your name. I've been watching the news all day. I've been reading the stories, and I've been thinking about all the things I saw and heard and said nothing about. Sarah's voice broke. I was complicit, Ms. Williams. I scheduled his meetings. I screened his calls. I helped him avoid the people he didn't want to see. I was part of the system that hurt so many people. Why are you calling me? Because I can't stay silent anymore. Because I have files, recordings, notes I kept over 12 years, because something inside me knew that someday the truth would need to come out. Sarah took a shaky breath. I know things, Ms. Williams. Things that go beyond what you've already uncovered. Things about other companies, other executives, a whole network of people who share the same attitudes Raymond had. Victoria's heart began to pound. What kind of network? They call themselves the Heritage Club. Old money, old families, old prejudices. They help each other hire. They help each other promote. And they help each other push out anyone who doesn't fit their idea of what a leader should look like. How many people are we talking about? Dozens? CEOs, board members, politicians. They've been operating for decades, protecting each other, advancing each other, making sure that people like you never get a real seat at the table. Victoria stood up, pacing now. Sarah, what you're describing sounds like organized discrimination. That's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. I know, that's why I'm scared. That's why I never said anything before. These are powerful people, Ms. Williams. They can destroy careers. They can destroy lives. They can try, but they can't destroy all of us. Not if we stand together. Silence on the line. Will you help me? Sarah whispered. Will you help me bring them down? Victoria looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, men in expensive suits were making decisions about who belonged and who didn't, who mattered and who didn't, who deserved respect and who could be dismissed as a janitor. She thought about her grandmother scrubbing floors for 40 years. She thought about George Washington, denied his dream for half a century. She thought about Marcus and Destiny and Terrell and all the others who had found the courage to speak up. and she thought about Sarah Chen Raymond Whitmore's own assistant offering to expose an entire network of privilege and prejudice. "Yes, Sarah," Victoria said, "I'll help you, but this time we're not just going after one company or one man. This time we're going after the whole rotten system." She ended the call and looked at her grandmother's briefcase one more time. The fight was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Sarah Chen arrived at Williams Capital Partners headquarters at 7:30 a.m. the next morning. She carried 2 large boxes filled with files. Recordings and documents she had accumulated over 12 years as Raymond Whitmore's executive assistant. Her hands trembled as security helped her through the doors. Her eyes darted nervously as if she expected someone to stop her at any moment. Victoria met her in the lobby personally. "Sarah, thank you for coming." "I almost didn't." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I drove around the block 4 times before I could make myself park. I kept thinking about what they'll do to me when they find out." "They can't hurt you anymore. Not here. Not with us." Sarah looked around the lobby, at the artwork by black artists, at the diverse faces of employees heading to their offices, at the warmth and professionalism that radiated from every corner. "It's different here," she said softly. "I can feel it." "That's what we're fighting for, the right for every workplace to feel like this." Victoria gestured toward the elevator. "Come, let's see what you've brought." In the conference room, Sarah's boxes transformed into a roadmap of corruption. Files spread across the table, photographs, emails, meeting notes, 12 years of secrets that Raymond Whitmore never knew his assistant was collecting. "I started keeping records after my first year," Sarah explained. "I saw things that didn't seem right. Comments Mr. Whitmore made when he thought no one was listening, instructions to screen out certain candidates, meetings with people who talked about keeping certain types out of their industries." Victoria picked up a photograph. Raymond Whitmore standing with a group of men in tuxedos. The caption on the back read Heritage Club Annual Dinner 2019. "Tell me about this Heritage Club." Sarah took a deep breath. "It started as a social organization. Old Boston families, old money. They told themselves they were preserving tradition, maintaining standards. But what they were really doing was creating a network of exclusion. How does it work? They share information, job openings, board positions, investment opportunities. If you're in the club, doors open. If you're not..." Sarah shrugged. "The doors don't just stay closed, they make sure you never even find them." David Park leaned forward. "How many members are we talking about?" "At least 73. CEOs, board members, senior partners at law firms and investment banks. A few politicians, 1 federal judge." Sarah pulled out a leather-bound notebook. "I kept a list. Names, companies, positions. Every time Mr. Whitmore mentioned someone as being one of us, I wrote it down." Victoria flipped through the notebook. Her expression darkened with each page. "These aren't just Boston companies. This network extends to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. We're talking about a nationwide conspiracy to exclude qualified candidates based on race. That's why I was scared to come forward. These people have power, real power. They can make problems disappear." "So can we." Victoria set down the notebook. "But we need to be strategic. We can't go after everyone at once. We need to start with the weakest links and work our way up." At 9:00 a.m., the town hall meeting at Whitmore Pharmaceuticals began. Over 2,000 employees filled the main auditorium. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. People whispered nervously. Rumors had been flying for days. No one knew what to expect. Patricia Morrison, the interim CEO, took the microphone first. "Thank you all for coming. I know the past few days have been difficult, confusing, frightening. Many of you are worried about your jobs, your futures, your place in this company." She paused. "Those fears are valid, but so is hope." She gestured toward the side of the stage. "I'd like to introduce someone who has played a crucial role in recent events. Someone who could have simply walked away from Whitmore after the way she was treated. Instead, she chose to help us become better. Please welcome Victoria Williams, CEO of Williams Capital Partners." The applause was scattered, uncertain. Many employees didn't know whether to clap or not. Was this the woman who had destroyed their company or saved it? Victoria walked to the microphone with her grandmother's briefcase in her hand. 2 days ago, I walked into this building for a meeting with your former CEO. I was wearing modest clothes. I was carrying this briefcase, which belonged to my grandmother. I drove a 10-year-old Honda. The room was silent. Your receptionist asked if I was there for the custodial interview. I was kept waiting for 45 minutes while white visitors were served coffee in the VIP lounge. I was shown to a windowless conference room instead of the executive boardroom. I was presented with a presentation designed for children. And when I extended my hand to your CEO in greeting, he refused to shake it. Murmurs rippled through the audience. He said he doesn't shake hands with janitors. Victoria let the words hang in the air. I could have responded with anger. I could have revealed who I was immediately and watched him grovel. Instead, I chose to observe, to document, to understand exactly what kind of culture existed within these walls. She set her grandmother's briefcase on the podium. This briefcase was carried by my grandmother for 40 years. She used it when she cleaned houses for white families. She scrubbed their floors. She washed their dishes. She raised their children while her own daughter sat alone waiting for her to come home. And every night she put every penny she earned into a jar because she believed that one day her granddaughter would sit at tables she was never allowed to approach. Victoria's voice grew stronger. I'm not here for revenge. I'm not here to punish. I'm here because discrimination has a cost. Not just for the people who experience it, but for the companies that practice it. When you judge people by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character, you lose talent. You lose innovation. You lose the very diversity of thought that makes companies great. She looked out at the sea of faces. Some of you are afraid right now, afraid of change, afraid of what the future holds. But I want you to know something. Williams Capital Partners has agreed to participate in rebuilding Whitmore, not because we want to control you, but because we believe in what this company can become. A hand shot up in the audience. Victoria pointed to the person. Ms. Williams, I've worked here for 15 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. How do I know this time is different? How do I know this isn't just PR? What's your name? Thomas? Thomas Wright? I'm in research and development. Thomas, that's a fair question. And the honest answer is that you don't know. Not yet. Trust is earned through actions, not words. All I can tell you is that we're committed to measurable change, independent audits, transparent reporting, real consequences for discrimination. Another hand went up, a young black woman. My name is Keisha Johnson. I've been here for 2 years. I've applied for 3 promotions. I've been passed over every time. Each time the position went to someone less qualified, someone who looked different from me. Is that going to change? Victoria felt her heart clench. This woman was her. 20 years ago, fighting the same battles. Keisha, stand up, please. Keisha stood hesitantly. I want everyone in this room to look at this woman. She's been passed over 3 times for promotions she deserved. Not because she wasn't qualified, but because of bias. Conscious or unconscious, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. Victoria turned back to Keisha. Yes, it's going to change. Starting today, every promotion decision at Whitmore will be reviewed by an independent panel. Every candidate will be evaluated on documented performance metrics, not subjective impressions. And every person who has been passed over unfairly will have their cases reviewed for potential redress. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. That's all I ever wanted. A fair chance. At 10:15 a.m., Marcus Phillips took the stage. He had never addressed a crowd this large. His hands were sweating. His voice trembled as he began. Most of you know me. I've been the diversity officer here for 8 years. And I have a confession to make. He paused. I failed you. The audience stirred. For 8 years, I wrote reports that nobody read. I implemented programs that nobody followed. I smiled in meetings and said nothing while discrimination happened right in front of me. I told myself I was being strategic, patient, playing the long game. His voice broke. I was lying to myself. I was scared. Scared of losing my job, scared of being labeled as difficult. Scared of becoming one of those people who got pushed out for speaking up. He looked at Victoria. Then I watched this woman walk into our conference room and face the same disrespect I'd witnessed for years. But she didn't smile through it. She didn't play along. She documented everything and she took action. Marcus turned back to the audience. That night I made a choice. I helped copy files from our server before they could be destroyed. I broke rules I'd followed for 8 years because I finally realized that following those rules made me complicit in something wrong. Gasps from the audience. I'm not telling you this because I want to be a hero. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that change requires courage. It requires risk. It requires ordinary people deciding that they won't stay silent anymore. He pulled out his phone. Yesterday I received 17 messages from colleagues thanking me for what I did. 17 people who said they'd wanted to speak up but were afraid. 17 people who might now find their own courage. He looked directly at the camera that was live streaming the event. To everyone watching, wherever you are, if you've witnessed discrimination and said nothing, you're not alone. If you've experienced discrimination and felt powerless, you're not alone. But silence is a choice. And from this moment forward, I'm choosing to speak. The applause that erupted was genuine, raw, the sound of 2,000 people releasing years of suppressed emotion. At 11:30 a.m., Victoria's phone buzzed with an urgent message. She stepped off stage to check it. David Park. Turn on CNBC now. She found a monitor backstage and turned it on. Raymond Whitmore's face filled the screen. He was being interviewed live. I'm the victim here, Raymond was saying. Victoria Williams deliberately deceived me. She dressed like a cleaning lady to entrap me. She manufactured a crisis to destroy my reputation and take over my family's company. The interviewer leaned forward. Mr. Whitmore, the recordings clearly show... The recordings show me treating someone appropriately based on how they presented themselves. If someone walks into my office looking like janitorial staff, I'm going to assume they're janitorial staff. That's not discrimination. That's common sense. Victoria felt her blood run cold. He's trying to flip the narrative, David said through the phone. He's positioning himself as the victim of reverse racism, and based on social media, some people are buying it. How many? Enough. The hashtag Whitmore was right is trending in certain circles. Conservative media is picking up the story. They're saying you used your wealth to destroy a successful businessman because he didn't recognize you. Victoria closed her eyes. She had expected pushback. She had expected some people to defend Raymond, but watching him on television twisting the truth with such confidence made her stomach turn. What do we do, Hybe? We stay the course. The truth is on our side. The truth doesn't always win, David. You know that. Then we make sure it does. We have Sarah Chen's files. We have the Heritage Club documentation. We have witnesses willing to testify. Raymond Whitmore can spin all he wants, but eventually the weight of evidence will crush him. Victoria watched Raymond continue his interview. He was charming, smooth, exactly the kind of man who had made her life difficult for 30 years. Let him talk, she said finally. Every word he says is another nail in his coffin. He just doesn't know it yet. At 1:00 p.m., the first Heritage Club member fell. Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Financial Services, announced his immediate resignation, citing personal reasons. Within an hour, it was reported that Williams Capital Partners had quietly divested from 3 companies where Pierce served on the board. The message was clear. The dominoes were starting to fall. At 2:30 p.m., Victoria met with Destiny Robinson and the group of employees she had organized. 18 people crowded into the conference room. Interns, junior analysts, administrative staff, people who had never been asked their opinions about anything. Thank you all for coming, Victoria said. I know this takes courage. Destiny spoke first. We've been talking among ourselves since yesterday, comparing notes, and we realized something. She looked around at her colleagues. What happened to each of us wasn't isolated. It was systematic. A young man named Jerome raised his hand. I'm in the IT department. When I started, I was assigned to help desk support, basic stuff, password resets, but I have a master's degree in computer science from Stanford. When I asked about moving to development, they told me I needed to pay my dues first. How long have you been paying your dues? 3 years. Meanwhile, 2 white guys with bachelor's degrees got moved to development within 6 months. A woman named Patricia chimed in. I'm in marketing. I've written campaigns that generated millions in revenue, but whenever there's a client presentation, they send someone else. Someone who looks more appropriate for client-facing roles. That's the exact phrase my manager used. Story after story poured out. Qualified people overlooked. Ideas stolen. Credit given to others. The 1,000 small cuts of daily discrimination. Victoria listened to each one, and with each story, her resolve hardened. Here's what we're going to do, Hybe, she said when everyone had spoken. We're going to document every single incident. Dates, times, names, witnesses. We're going to build a case so comprehensive that no one can dismiss it as isolated incidents or oversensitive employees. And then what? Destiny asked. And then we change the system, not just at Whitmore, everywhere, because if this is happening here, it's happening at hundreds of other companies. And the only way to stop it is to make discrimination so expensive that no company can afford it. At 4:00 p.m., Raymond Whitmore received a phone call that changed everything. Raymond, it's Charles Montgomery. Raymond sat up straight. Charles Montgomery was the de facto leader of the Heritage Club. Old money, old power, a man who could make or break careers with a single phone call. Charles, thank you for calling. I assume you've seen the news? I've seen it. Charles's voice was cold. "We all have. I want you to know that I haven't said anything about the club. I've kept our affairs completely confidential. We know that's not why I'm calling." Raymond's blood ran cold. "Then why? Victoria Williams has files, Raymond. Files about the club, names, dates, meeting notes. We don't know how she got them, but she has them." "That's impossible. I never kept anything in writing." "Someone did, and now Williams Capital is using that information to systematically pressure our members. Jonathan Pierce resigned this morning. 2 more are expected to announce tomorrow." Raymond's hands began to shake. "What do you want me to do?" "We want you to fix this. You created this problem. You fix it." "How? She has billions of dollars and media attention. I have nothing." "You have information too, Raymond. Information about her, her company, her past. Find something. Anything. Discredit her before she destroys all of us." The line went dead. Raymond stared at his phone. Charles Montgomery had just given him an order to destroy Victoria Williams by any means necessary. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he had hoped never to use. "Michael, it's Raymond Whitmore. I need your services. I need everything you can find on Victoria Williams, her company, her finances, her personal life, everything. That's going to be expensive. I don't care about the cost. Just find something I can use." At 5:45 p.m., Victoria received an anonymous package. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Victoria at 23 years old, standing outside a bank that no longer existed. The note read, "We know about First Federal. We know what you did. Back off or the world finds out." Victoria's heart stopped. First Federal Trust? The bank where she had worked as a junior analyst 24 years ago. The bank where she had witnessed fraud and reported it to regulators. The bank that had retaliated by framing her for misconduct. She had been cleared of all charges. The executives who had framed her had gone to prison. But the experience had nearly destroyed her career before it began. Someone was threatening to resurrect that old history, to twist it, to make her look guilty of something she had actually exposed. Her phone rang. David. "Victoria, we have a problem. Someone is shopping a story about you to tabloid media, something about fraud at a bank in the 1990s. I know, I just received a warning. What do you want to do?" Victoria looked at the photograph. At her 23-year-old self, young and hopeful and about to have her world shattered by powerful men who didn't appreciate being challenged. "Get ahead of it. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning. I'll tell the whole story myself, every detail, the fraud I witnessed, the retaliation I faced, the vindication that followed." "You sure that's a painful chapter to revisit publicly?" "I'd rather control the narrative than let them control it. And David? This tells me we're getting close. They wouldn't be this desperate if we weren't about to break something wide open." At 7:30 p.m., Sarah Chen called with urgent news. "Ms. Williams, I just received a call from my former colleague at Whitmore. Raymond has hired Michael Torres." "Who is Michael Torres?" "A private investigator, the kind who doesn't ask questions about methods. The Heritage Club has used him before to dig up dirt on people who threaten them." Victoria absorbed this information. "What can he find?" "I don't know, but I know what he's capable of. He doesn't just investigate. He manufactures. He plants evidence. He creates stories that destroy people." "Thank you for the warning, Sarah." "Be careful, Ms. Williams. These people play dirty. They've been getting away with it for decades because no one has ever challenged them like you are." Victoria ended the call and sat in silence. The fight was escalating. The stakes were rising. And for the first time since this began, she felt a flicker of fear. Not for herself, for everyone who had joined her. Marcus, Destiny, George, Terrell, Sarah. All of them had put their trust in her. All of them were now potential targets. She picked up her phone and called David. "I want security increased for everyone on our team. Personal protection, digital security, everything." "Already on it. I anticipated this." "I also want us to accelerate our timeline. If they're going to attack us, we need to strike first. How quickly can we get the Heritage Club story ready for release? We could have something comprehensive within 72 hours. Make it 48. I want this story to break before they have a chance to destroy us." At 900 p.m., George Washington sat in his daughter's living room, staring at a letter. The letter was from Williams Capital Partners. It outlined his new position, his salary, his benefits. Numbers he had never imagined seeing attached to his own name. "Daddy?" His daughter Michelle sat beside him. "Are you okay?" "I'm trying to understand," George said slowly. 50 years ago, I walked into Whitmore Pharmaceuticals with a chemistry degree and a dream. They told me I wasn't good enough. For 50 years, I mopped their floors and watched people half my age do work I could have done better. I know, Daddy. And now this woman, this Victoria Williams, she's offering me everything I ever wanted. A real job. A real title. Real respect. His voice broke. Why now? Why after all this time? Michelle took her father's hand. Because someone finally saw you, Daddy. Someone finally saw what you could have been all along. I'm 67 years old, baby. I'm tired. My back hurts. My hands shake. Maybe it's too late for me. It's never too late. Michelle squeezed his hand. You taught me that. Remember what you said when I wanted to quit nursing school? You said that dreams don't have expiration dates. That as long as you're breathing, you can still become who you were meant to be. George wiped his eyes. I said that. You did. And you were right. Michelle smiled. Take the job, Daddy. Not for the money, not for the title. Take it because you deserve to finally be seen. Take it for Mama. She always believed in you. George looked at the letter one more time. Then he picked up a pen and signed his name. At 10:30 p.m., Raymond Whitmore received the call he had been waiting for. I found something, Michael Torres said. Raymond leaned forward. Tell me. Victoria Williams's mother, Evelyn Williams. She was arrested in 1978 for participating in a civil rights protest. She spent 3 days in jail. That's it. A civil rights arrest that makes her look like a hero, not a criminal. There's more. The protest turned violent. Someone threw a brick through a store window. The store owner was injured. He claimed Evelyn Williams was the one who threw the brick. Raymond's pulse quickened. Was she convicted? Charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. But the accusation is still on record. And accusations can be spun, especially if the right media outlets pick up the story. Do it. I want that story everywhere by morning. It's going to cost you. I don't care. Make Victoria Williams spend tomorrow defending her mother instead of attacking me. At 11:15 p.m., Victoria received a call from her mother. Baby girl, something strange is happening. A reporter just called asking about an arrest in 1978. How did they even know about that? Victoria closed her eyes. They were going after her mother, her 72-year-old mother who had spent her entire life fighting for justice. Mama, don't talk to anyone. Don't answer any calls from numbers you don't recognize. I'm going to handle this. Handle what, Victoria? What's going on? The people I'm fighting against. They're fighting back. They're going to try to hurt us through you. Silence on the line. Let them try. Her mother's voice hardened with decades of experience facing down hatred. I spent 3 days in a Birmingham jail cell because I believed black people deserved to vote. I'm not afraid of some rich white men who are scared of losing their power. Mama, no, baby girl, you listen to me. Your grandmother scrubbed floors so I could march. I marched so you could climb, and you climbed so high that now you're scaring the people who tried to keep us down. That's not something to be afraid of. That's something to be proud of. Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. They're going to say terrible things about you, Mama. They're going to twist the truth. They're going to make you look like a criminal. They've been calling people like us criminals for 400 years. It hasn't stopped us yet. Her mother's voice softened. You're doing important work, baby girl. Don't let them stop you. Don't let them win. Your grandmother didn't scrub floors for 50 years so her granddaughter could back down from a fight. I won't, Mama. I promise. Good. Now get some sleep. You've got a war to win tomorrow. Victoria ended the call and sat in the darkness of her office. Tomorrow the battle would escalate. Tomorrow Raymond Whitmore would try to destroy her by destroying her mother. Tomorrow the Heritage Club would deploy everything they had to stop her from exposing their decades of discrimination. And tomorrow Victoria Williams would show them what happened when they underestimated a woman they had dismissed as a janitor. She picked up her grandmother's briefcase and held it close. I won't let them win, she whispered. Not this time. Not ever. The clock struck midnight. The hardest day was still to come. The morning of the final battle arrived at 5:47 a.m. with Victoria's phone exploding with notifications. The story about her mother had dropped. Conservative media outlets ran headlines, screaming about the violent past of Victoria Williams's family. Social media erupted with accusations. Within an hour, the hashtag #ViolentWilliams was trending. Victoria read the articles with cold fury. They had twisted everything. Her mother's peaceful protest had become a riot. A brick that someone else threw had become her mother's weapon. 3 days in jail for civil disobedience had become evidence of criminal tendencies. Her phone rang. David Park. How bad is it? Bad. The story is everywhere. Our PR team is overwhelmed with media requests. Advertisers on 3 of our portfolio companies are asking questions. What about the press conference? Is it still scheduled? 9 a.m. But Victoria, maybe we should postpone. Give this story time to die down before we... No. Victoria's voice was steel. We don't postpone. We don't hide. We don't let them control the narrative. They want to talk about my mother, fine. Let's talk about my mother. At 6:30 a.m., Victoria called her mother. Mama, I need you to do something for me. Anything, baby girl. I need you to come to the press conference this morning. I need you to stand beside me. I need the world to see exactly who you are. Silence on the line. You want me to face those cameras, those people who are saying those terrible things. I want you to show them that they can't break us. I want you to show them that the woman they're trying to destroy has more courage and dignity in her little finger than they have in their entire bodies. Another pause. Then her mother laughed, a strong, defiant laugh that Victoria remembered from childhood. I'll be there, and Victoria, I'm wearing my Sunday best. If they're going to put me on television, I'm going to look good doing it. At 8:15 a.m., Raymond Whitmore watched the news coverage with satisfaction. His plan was working. Victoria Williams was on the defensive. The media was focused on her mother's past instead of his present. By the time this day was over, the whole narrative would shift. He would be the victim. She would be the aggressor. His phone rang. Charles Montgomery. Raymond, excellent work. The Williams story is dominating the news cycle. Our people are amplifying it across every platform. Thank you, Charles. I told you I could handle this. Don't celebrate yet. Williams has a press conference scheduled for 9. We need to be prepared for whatever she's planning. What can she possibly do? The story is out there. She can't unring that bell? Never underestimate a cornered enemy, Raymond. They fight hardest when they have nothing to lose. At 8:45 a.m., Victoria arrived at the press conference venue. The room was packed. Every major news outlet had sent reporters. Cameras lined the back wall. The buzz of conversation was deafening. Victoria walked to the podium with her mother beside her. Evelyn Williams was 72 years old, her hair silver, her posture straight, her eyes clear and unafraid. The room fell silent. Thank you all for coming, Victoria began. I know there are many questions about the stories that have been circulating. I'm here to answer all of them, but first I want to introduce someone. She turned to her mother. This is Evelyn Williams, my mother, the woman whose reputation is being attacked by people who are afraid of what I'm about to expose. Evelyn stepped forward. Her voice was strong, unwavering. In 1978, I participated in a peaceful march for voting rights in Birmingham, Alabama. I was 26 years old. I was pregnant with Victoria, and I was arrested because I believed that black people deserve the right to vote without being terrorized. The room was utterly silent. During that march, someone threw a brick. It wasn't me. I've never thrown anything at anyone in my life. But a store owner claimed it was me, and I spent 3 days in jail before the charges were dropped for lack of evidence. She looked directly into the cameras. I'm not ashamed of those 3 days. I'm proud of them. I'm proud that I stood up for what was right. I'm proud that my daughter learned from my example. And I'm proud that the men who are trying to destroy us are so afraid of what we represent that they have to dig up 50-year-old lies to fight back. Victoria took the microphone back. My mother's arrest record has been public knowledge for decades. It's never been a secret. The only reason it's news today is because powerful people are desperate to distract you from what really matters. She pulled out a thick folder. This is what really matters. This is documentation of a network called the Heritage Club. 73 executives across dozens of companies who have been systematically excluding qualified candidates based on race for over 30 years. Gasps from the audience. Names, dates, meeting minutes, internal communications, evidence of coordinated discrimination on a scale that makes Raymond Whitmore's behavior look like amateur hour. She held up the folder. This documentation will be released to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and federal prosecutors within the hour. Every member of the Heritage Club will face investigation. Every company they control will face scrutiny. A reporter shouted a question. Ms. Williams, can you prove these allegations? I can do better than prove them. I can show you. She nodded to David, who pressed a button on his laptop. The screens around the room flickered to life. Video footage began playing. Raymond Whitmore at a Heritage Club dinner raising a glass. To keeping America's boardrooms in the right hands, Raymond said on the video, laughing with his companions. to making sure that certain people know their place. The room erupted. At 9:47 a.m., Raymond Whitmore's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but something made him answer. Mr. Whitmore, this is Special Agent Jennifer Torres with the FBI. We need you to come in for questioning regarding allegations of organized discrimination and obstruction of justice. Raymond's blood turned to ice. I don't understand. What allegations? Sir, I recommend you contact your attorney immediately. Agents will be at your residence within the hour. The line went dead. Raymond sat frozen. His hands trembled. His vision blurred. Everything he had built, everything he had protected, everything he had fought for was crumbling around him. His phone rang again. Charles Montgomery. Raymond, what the hell did you do? The FBI just showed up at my office. They're talking about RICO charges, organized criminal conspiracy. Charles, I don't know how she got that video. I don't know how Tabby. You were recorded at our private dinners, our confidential meetings. You brought surveillance into the Heritage Club. No, I never. I don't know who recorded it. I swear, Charles, I had nothing to do with this. It doesn't matter anymore. Charles's voice was ice. You're on your own, Raymond. The club doesn't know you. We've never known you. Don't contact any of us again. The line went dead. Raymond stared at his phone. The Heritage Club, the network he had relied on for 30 years, had just abandoned him. He was alone. At 10:30 a.m., Victoria finished her press conference. The questions had been relentless. The cameras had captured everything. By the time she stepped away from the podium, the Heritage Club story was the biggest news in the country. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Williams, this is Alan Whitmore. I want to thank you. What you've done today will change everything. My grandfather would be proud. She typed back, your grandfather built something worth saving. Now it's up to you to make sure it survives. Another text came in, this one from Marcus Phillips. Watching the press conference with my daughter. She's crying. She says she wants to be just like you when she grows up. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She typed, tell her she can be anything she wants to be. That's what we're fighting for. At 11:15 a.m., federal agents arrived at Raymond Whitmore's mansion. Caroline was gone. The house was empty except for Raymond and the ghosts of his former life. He watched through the window as 3 black SUVs pulled into his driveway. Men in suits stepped out. They walked toward his front door with the inevitability of judgment. Raymond's phone buzzed one last time. A text from Victoria Williams. You asked me what I was doing in your boardroom. Now you know. I was deciding whether to end your career. You made the choice easy. The doorbell rang. Raymond didn't move. He couldn't move. His legs wouldn't obey. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The doorbell rang again. Then a knock. Firm. Official. Mr. Whitmore, this is the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest. Raymond closed his eyes. He thought about his grandfather who had built Whitmore Pharmaceuticals from nothing. He thought about his father who had expanded it into an empire. He thought about everything he had been given and everything he had squandered. And he thought about Victoria Williams standing in his conference room with an outstretched hand that he had refused to shake. I don't shake hands with janitors. Those 5 words had destroyed him. He walked to the door and opened it. Raymond Whitmore. The lead agent said, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and violations of federal civil rights laws. You have the right to remain silent. Raymond didn't hear the rest. He didn't need to. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he understood that his life as he knew it was over. At 1:30 p.m., Victoria visited George Washington at his daughter's house. George was sitting on the porch staring at nothing. His new Williams Capital employee badge sat on the table beside him, still in its plastic sleeve. George? Are you okay? He looked up. His eyes were red. I've been thinking all morning about what happened, about what you did. What do you mean? You didn't just take down Raymond Whitmore. You took down the whole system, the Heritage Club, all those men who decided 50 years ago that people like me didn't belong. Victoria sat beside him. I had help, a lot of help. None of this would have been possible without people like you and Marcus and Destiny. But you started it. You walked into that building knowing what they would do to you, and you did it anyway. George's voice cracked. Why would you put yourself through that? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because my grandmother cleaned houses for 40 years, she said finally. Because she saved every penny so that one day I could sit at tables she was never allowed to approach. And because I made a promise to her on the day she died that I would use whatever power I gained to open doors for others. She took George's hand. You've been waiting 50 years for someone to open a door for you, George. Now it's open. The question is whether you're going to walk through it. George looked at his employee badge, then at Victoria, then at his daughter, who was watching from the doorway with tears streaming down her face. I'm scared, he admitted. I've been a janitor for so long. What if I can't do anything else? What if I've forgotten everything I learned? You haven't forgotten. Knowledge doesn't disappear just because people refuse to let you use it. It waits. It's been waiting for you all these years. George picked up the badge. His hands were steady now. My wife used to tell me that dreams don't have expiration dates, Uncle, he said softly. I never believed her. I thought I was too old, too tired, too broken. What do you believe now? George stood up slowly. He slipped the badge over his neck and looked at himself in the window's reflection. For the first time in 50 years, he saw a scientist looking back at him. I believe it's time to find out what I could have been all along. At 3:00 p.m., Victoria returned to Williams Capital to find a crowd waiting. Employees had gathered in the main lobby. Marcus Phillips, Destiny Robinson, Jerome from IT, Patricia from marketing, Sarah Chen, dozens of others. They burst into applause as she walked through the doors. What's going on? Victoria asked. David stepped forward with a tablet. The Heritage Club story has gone viral. The FBI has announced investigations into 37 executives across 22 companies. 3 more CEOs have resigned in the past hour. And, he smiled, Williams Capital's client inquiries have increased by 400% since this morning. Victoria looked at the faces around her. People who had been afraid. People who had been silenced. People who were now standing tall. This isn't about client inquiries, she said. This is about something much more important. She walked to the center of the lobby. Every person in this room has a story. A moment when someone told you that you didn't belong. A moment when you were overlooked or dismissed or told that you weren't the right fit. I want you to remember those moments. She looked around at the crowd. And then I want you to let them go, because those moments don't define you. They define the people who created them. They define a system that was designed to keep people like us down. And that system is now crumbling. Marcus stepped forward. Victoria, we have something for you. Destiny brought out a box. Inside was a framed photograph. Victoria looked at it and felt her breath catch. It was a picture of her grandmother. Young, beautiful, standing outside a house with a broom in her hand and determination in her eyes. Someone had written on the bottom, Martha Williams, 1962. She dreamed so her granddaughter could achieve. Where did you get this? Victoria whispered. Your mother sent it, Marcus said. She thought you should have it here, in your office, so you never forget where you came from. Victoria held the photograph to her chest. Tears streamed down her face. I never forgot, she said. Not for one moment, not for one day. At 5:00 p.m., Raymond Whitmore sat in a federal holding cell. His lawyer had come and gone. The charges had been read. The reality had set in. He was facing 15 to 20 years in federal prison. His assets would be seized. His reputation was destroyed. His wife had filed for divorce. His friends had abandoned him. His empire had crumbled. And all because he had refused to shake hands with a woman he assumed was a janitor. A guard appeared at the cell door. Whitmore, you have a visitor. Raymond looked up. He expected his lawyer, perhaps, or maybe a reporter looking for a quote. Instead, Victoria Williams walked into the visiting room. Raymond stared at her through the glass partition. She was wearing the same modest blazer she had worn to his office. She was carrying the same old briefcase, but something was different now. She carried herself like a queen. Why are you here? Raymond asked, his voice hoarse. I wanted to see you one more time. I wanted to understand. Understand what? Victoria leaned forward. Why? Why did you look at me and see a janitor? Why did you treat me like I was beneath you? Why couldn't you just shake my hand like a decent human being? Raymond was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was small. Because that's what I was taught. My father, my grandfather, the men in my world. They all believed that there was a natural order, that some people were meant to lead and others were meant to serve, and that mixing the two was wrong. Your grandfather hired a Chinese immigrant when no one else would. That was different. Was it, or did your family lose its way somewhere along the line? Did privilege become prejudice so gradually that you didn't even notice? Raymond had no answer. Victoria stood up. I didn't come here for an apology. I don't need one. I came here to tell you that the world you believed in is dying. The system that protected you is crumbling. And the people you dismissed as janitors and diversity hires and not the right fit, they're building something new, something better, something you'll never be part of. She picked up her briefcase. Enjoy your cell, Mr. Whitmore. You've got a lot of time to think about the choices you made. She walked out without looking back. At 7:30 p.m., Victoria hosted a dinner at Williams' Capital. Everyone was there. Marcus and his daughter, Destiny and her fellow interns, George Washington and his family, Sarah Chen, Terrell Washington, the three executives who had been forced out of Whitmore and were now being welcomed as consultants, even Alan Whitmore, who had helped bring down his own cousin. Victoria stood at the head of the table. 6 days ago, I walked into Whitmore Pharmaceuticals for what I thought would be a routine investment meeting. I expected some disrespect, some condescension, the usual treatment that women who look like me receive in corporate America. She shook her head. I didn't expect to find a system of discrimination that stretched across decades and dozens of companies. I didn't expect to uncover a conspiracy to exclude qualified people based on the color of their skin, and I definitely didn't expect to be standing here today surrounded by people who found the courage to fight back. She raised her glass. This victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to George Washington, who waited 50 years for someone to recognize his talent. It belongs to Marcus Phillips, who risked everything to do the right thing. It belongs to Destiny Robinson, and Jerome and Patricia, and everyone who shared their stories despite their fear. It belongs to Sarah Chen, who spent 12 years collecting evidence because she knew that someday the truth would need to come out. She looked around the table at the faces that had become family. And it belongs to my grandmother, Martha Williams, who scrubbed floors for 40 years so that her granddaughter could one day scrub something far more important. The stain of discrimination that has poisoned corporate America for far too long. Everyone raised their glasses. To the future, Victoria said. To the future, they echoed. At 9:00 p.m., Victoria sat alone in her office. The day was over. The battle was won. Raymond Whitmore was in jail. The Heritage Club was destroyed. Whitmore Pharmaceuticals was beginning its transformation under new leadership. Dozens of people who had been silenced were finally finding their voices. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Proud of you, baby girl. Your grandmother is smiling tonight. Victoria smiled and typed back, couldn't have done it without everything you taught me. Love you, Mama. She set down her phone and picked up her grandmother's briefcase. The worn leather was soft under her fingers. The scratches told stories of 1,000 workdays, 1,000 small humiliations, 1,000 quiet acts of dignity. Her office door opened. David Park peeked in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's important. Who? She says her name is Jennifer Morrison. She's the CEO of Morrison Technologies. She just flew in from San Francisco. She says she needs your help. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Help with what? David smiled. She says her company has a discrimination problem. She says she's watched what you did with Whitmore, and she wants to know if you can do the same thing for her. She wants to clean house before someone else does. Victoria laughed, a real laugh. A tired, grateful, hopeful laugh. Send her in. She stood up and straightened her blazer. The same blazer she had worn to Whitmore. The same blazer that Raymond Whitmore had looked at with contempt. The door opened and Jennifer Morrison walked in. She was white, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a nervous expression. Ms. Williams, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for seeing me. Victoria looked at the extended hand. She thought about Raymond Whitmore standing in his boardroom, refusing to offer the same courtesy. She reached out and shook Jennifer's hand firmly. That's how you treat a stranger, Victoria said. With basic human dignity, it's not complicated. Now tell me about your company. At 11:59 p.m., Victoria finally went home. Her penthouse was quiet. The city lights sparkled through the windows. On her table sat her grandmother's photograph, now framed and waiting to be hung on her office wall. Victoria poured herself a glass of wine and sat by the window. 1 week ago, she had been a successful businesswoman with something to prove. Tonight, she was something more. A symbol. A warrior. A voice for everyone who had ever been dismissed, diminished, or denied. Her phone buzzed one final time. A news alert. Heritage Club investigation expands. FBI announces criminal charges against 41 executives nationwide. Victoria read the headline and smiled. This was just the beginning. There would be more battles, more Raymond Whitmores to face, more systems to dismantle. The work of creating a truly equal world was never finished. But tonight she allowed herself to celebrate. To rest, to remember. She raised her glass to the city outside her window. To you, Grandma, she whispered. I sat at their table. And then I showed them who really belonged there. She drank deeply and set down her glass. Tomorrow there would be more work to do, more hands to shake, more doors to open, more people to lift up. But tonight, Victoria Williams allowed herself to feel something she had been chasing her entire life. Not success, not wealth, not power, peace. The peace of knowing that she had honored her grandmother's sacrifice, that she had kept her promise, that she had used everything she had been given to create opportunities for others, and the peace of knowing that Raymond Whitmore, the man who refused to shake hands with janitors, would spend the rest of his life regretting 5 words that had cost him everything. Victoria looked at her grandmother's photograph one last time. "We did it," she said. "Together." Then she turned off the lights and went to sleep. Outside her window, the city sparkled with possibility. And somewhere in that city, George Washington was studying chemistry textbooks for the first time in 50 years, preparing for the job he had always deserved. And Marcus Phillips was reading a bedtime story to his daughter, who now believed she could become anything she wanted to be. And Destiny Robinson was drafting her application for Williams Capital's summer leadership program, knowing that this time her talent would be recognized. And a generation of young people who had been told they didn't belong were watching the news, seeing what was possible, and beginning to dream bigger dreams. Because Victoria Williams had walked into a boardroom expecting disrespect and walked out having changed the world. Because she had refused to accept that some people were worth more than others. Because she had proven that courage and dignity and determination could overcome even the most entrenched systems of discrimination. And because she had shown everyone watching that the only real measure of a person's worth is not where they come from or what they look like, but what they do with the power they have. True power is not measured by who you can refuse to acknowledge. True power is measured by who you choose to lift up. Raymond Whitmore learned that lesson too late, but for everyone else the lesson was just beginning, and that made all the difference.